close your eyes for a moment and try to listen to what is happening inside you right now. Not the noise outside, not the thoughts rushing through your mind, but that small, thin, almost invisible feeling resting somewhere in your chest. A part of you is tired. A part of you wants to breathe. A part of you is longing to touch real peace. In the noise of everyday life, it is so easy to forget something simple. Beneath all the worries, beneath all the plans, beneath all the roles you carry each day, there is a quiet space that has never disappeared. You just moved too fast, too far, for too long. This video is not here to force you to become someone else. It is not here to demand calmness or strength or any kind of achievement. This video is simply here to guide you home. Home to yourself. Home to your breath, soft like flowing water. Home to your heart, wounded perhaps, but still perfectly capable of opening again. Home to the peace you lost somewhere along the way. During the next 180 minutes, I will take you through stories, images, breaths, and moments where there is no right or wrong, no pressure, no expectations, nothing to perform. Just you, just this moment, just the quiet that has always been waiting for you. Maybe you are lying down. Maybe you are sitting. Maybe you have had a long, heavy day. Or maybe you simply want a place to rest, to soften, to be yourself, even for a little while. Whatever brought you here, I want you to know that you are in the right place, at the right time, on the right path. All you need to do now is allow yourself to let go, not to force anything, not to hold anything in, not to run toward anything. Let this voice, these stories, and these gentle images guide you to a quiet space far away, yet somehow very close, a place that lives inside you. You do not need to search for peace outside. True peace has always been here, waiting for you, and it has never left. Take a slow, deep breath in and exhale gently. Your journey home begins now. Tonight we begin a long and gentle journey. A journey that does not take you across mountains or oceans, but through something far more intimate, the landscape of your own mind. As you settle into wherever you are resting, allow a slow breath to enter. Let your exhale soften the edges of your body. Let your shoulders drift downward. Let your jaw unclench. Nothing about this moment needs to be different. If you are lying down, let your weight sink fully into the surface beneath you. If you are sitting, feel your spine gently lengthen as if the crown of your head is being lifted by a thin thread of moonlight. Whatever posture you are in, let it support you. You do not need to hold yourself up by force. This is where our exploration begins, with the simple truth that peace does not come from trying harder. It comes from letting go of the effort that blocks peace from appearing. There is an old teaching in Zen that says, "A door that is pushed will not open. It opens only when the hand is withdrawn." It sounds paradoxical. How can withdrawing effort bring the result you want? To understand this, let me tell you a story. In a quiet mountain town lived a calligrapher named Ryoya. For decades, people traveled from distant places just to watch him paint characters with a single, fluid movement. His brush strokes were clean, alive, almost effortless. The ink flowed as if guided by something deeper than his hand. One afternoon, a young man arrived at Ryoya's home. He bowed deeply and said, "Master, I want to learn the art of effortless brushwork. Please teach me." Ryoya nodded and placed a blank scroll on the table. He dipped the brush in ink and handed it to the young man. "Write a single character," he said. "Write the word quiet." The student took a breath, lifted the brush, and began to write. His strokes were rigid, his wrist was tense. The brush trembled with each movement. When he finished, the character looked strained, as if it had been forced into existence. Ryoya studied the scroll but said nothing. "Let me try again," the student insisted. He dipped the brush and wrote the same character once more. This time he tried to relax, but he tried to relax. His shoulders were tight, his breath was shallow. Although the second character was slightly better, it was still stiff and shaky. The young man grew frustrated. "Master, why can't I do it? Please correct me." Ryoya walked to the far side of the room. He opened the window, letting a cool breeze enter. Then he said, "Put down the brush." The student obeyed. "Now," Ryoya said, "take the brush again, and this time I want you to try your hardest to make the worst possible stroke." The student blinked. "The worst?" "Yes, make a terrible character. Make it stiff, ugly, unbalanced. Try with all your strength to make it terrible." The young man hesitated, then lifted the brush and dragged it across the scroll. He made no attempt to impress, no attempt to be correct, no attempt to control the movement. He simply moved the brush. The stroke was loose, unplanned, free, alive. Ryoya smiled. "For the first time," he said, "you did not interfere." He placed the student's shaky earlier attempts beside the new one. The difference was unmistakable. "When you tried to paint perfectly," Ryoya explained, "your mind and your hand were fighting each other. You were forcing the brush. You were pushing the door. But when I asked you to paint badly, you stopped interfering. You let the brush move freely." Effortless action appears only when the unnecessary effort disappears. It took the student several moments to understand this. All his life he had been told to try harder, to push, to control, to perfect. But here was a truth that contradicted everything he had believed. Trying too hard blocks what you want. Letting go allows it to unfold. This is the foundation of our journey tonight. You do not have to force peace. You do not have to force calm. You do not have to force sleep. In fact, the more you push for sleep, the further it moves away from you. The more you chase silence, the louder your thoughts become. So for now, give up the chase. Leave everything as it is. Leave yourself as you are. Let go of the invisible fist you have been holding around your thoughts, your breath, your body. You may even feel that fist unclench without effort. Your breath melts into its natural rhythm. Your mind drifts like a cloud in a slow evening breeze. Your muscles loosen because they have been waiting for permission to let go. Everything softens the moment you stop interfering. You are not here to control your experience. You are here to meet it gently without resistance. The door you have been pushing for years will open on its own. All you need to do is remove the pressure. You can rest now. Not because you have earned rest, not because you have completed anything, but because rest is your natural state when you stop struggling. Let the mind do as it wishes. Let the body settle as it wishes. Let the breath flow as it wishes. You do not need to sculpt this moment, just let it be. And in letting it be, you will begin to feel a quiet peace rising from within, like a warm lantern being lit in a dark room. There is a certain kind of wisdom that does not come from study. It does not come from discipline or effort. It comes from watching the world as it truly is. One of the clearest teachers in nature is the river. If you have ever sat beside a river at dusk, you already know this truth. The water does not ask how to flow. It does not demand instruction. It does not pause to consider whether its path is correct. It simply moves, downward, forward, around rocks, over pebbles, through narrow channels, across wide and open beds. The river knows its way not because it thinks, but because it does not resist. Tonight, as we ease deeper into stillness, let me tell you the story of a man who learned this lesson by accident. His name was Aisho, and he was known in his village for one thing. He tried too hard at everything. When he worked in the fields, he worked until his body ached. When he practiced archery, he strained so intensely that his fingers blistered. When he meditated, he clenched his jaw and forced his breath into rigid patterns. People admired his dedication, but they also saw the tension in him, the way his shoulders rose toward his ears, the way his eyes darted with restless energy, the way he fought every moment as if it were a battle he needed to win. One summer, Aisho decided he needed guidance. He had heard of a reclusive Zen master named Myosin who lived near a quiet river deep in the mountains. The master rarely accepted visitors, but Aisho's determination pushed him forward. He climbed steep paths, crossed slippery stones, and finally arrived at a small hut beside the water. The master greeted him with a nod and offered tea. "Master," Aisho said, "I want to learn peace. I want to learn how to calm my mind. I want to be free of struggle." Myosin looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You want too many things?" Aisho stiffened. but I'm willing to work hard. I'll do whatever it takes. That, the master said calmly, is the very reason you suffer. Aisho frowned. The answer made no sense to him. Before he could argue, Myosin stood and motioned for him to follow. They walked to the riverbank. The sun was lowering in the western sky, turning the water gold. I sit, the master said. Aisho obeyed. Then Myosin pointed at the water. Look at the river, tell me what you see. Aisho watched for a moment. I see water, he said, moving quickly. The master shook his head. Look again. Aisho tried to concentrate. The water rushed over rocks. It swirled around fallen branches. It shimmered in the fading light. Master, he said, I still see only water. Myosin picked up a small piece of driftwood and tossed it into the river. Now, he said, tell me what the water is doing. Aisho watched as the wood spun, dipped, rose, and floated effortlessly downstream. It's moving around obstacles, he said, finding its way. Myosin nodded. And how does it find that way? Aisho opened his mouth, but no answer formed. It finds its way, Myosin said, because it doesn't insist on a way. The master cupped his hands as if holding something fragile. The water does not try to control the rocks, he continued. It does not say, this stone should not be here. It does not force a straight path or tense itself against what appears. It meets everything with softness, and because of that softness it passes through places where rigid things break. Aisho stared at the river, absorbing the words slowly. That driftwood doesn't fight, Myosin said. It doesn't try to choose one path over another. And yet without struggle it travels farther in one afternoon than a stubborn man travels in a week. Aisho felt heat rising in his chest, not anger but recognition. My whole life, he whispered. I've done the opposite. I've pushed, struggled, forced. Yes, the master said. You believed effort was the path, but effort is only useful when it grows from clarity. When effort comes from fear or the need to control, it becomes the source of suffering. Myosin sat quietly for a moment. Then he asked, why did you come here? Aisho took a breath. To find peace. The master shook his head. You came here to escape your discomfort, not to understand it. You want peace the way a drowning man wants air, desperately, violently. But peace cannot be wanted that way. You must stop reaching, stop grasping, stop chasing the idea of peace. Then what should I do? Aisho asked helplessly. You should learn from the river, Myosin said gently. Let go of the tension that blocks your natural flow. Let things unfold without forcing them. Aisho looked down. His hands were clenched into fists. He hadn't even noticed. Myosin smiled faintly. You see, even your hands try too hard to exist. Aisho opened his hands slowly. His palms felt warm. The tightness in his chest loosened slightly. The river kept flowing, unbothered by the drama of human effort. Myosin continued. When you release excess control, something remarkable happens. Your breath finds its own rhythm. Your mind softens. Your body begins to move like water, guided by its own intelligence. You begin to trust the moment instead of trying to push it into shape. The master dipped his fingers into the cool river and let droplets fall back into the current. Notice, he said softly, how the river does not resist gravity. It works with life rather than against it. That is why it smooths stone. That is why it carves valleys. That is why it travels to the sea without knowing the way. Aisho watched the water move. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel the urge to analyze or control. He simply observed, the way a child might observe a flickering candle flame. A dragonfly skimmed the surface of the river, its wings catching the last rays of sunlight. Ripples spread outward in slow, widening circles. Something in Aisho's heart moved with those ripples. And this peace, Myosin said quietly, is not something you create. It exists already. But you have spent many years stirring the water of your mind. When you stir water, you make it cloudy. When you leave it alone, it becomes clear on its own. The master stood and gestured for Aisho to follow him back toward the hut. Tonight, he said, sleep near the river, listen to it, learn its rhythm. Do not try to meditate, do not try to relax, do not try to be peaceful. Just lie down and let the river teach you how to be at ease. Aisho obeyed. He spread a simple mat near the water's edge. The stars began to appear above him one by one. The river shimmered under the moonlight, moving with a quiet certainty. For many hours Aisho simply listened, and slowly, quietly, something inside him began to loosen, like a tight knot being undone by gentle hands. The river flowed, his breath flowed, his thoughts flowed. He had not forced anything, yet everything was changing. By midnight he felt a softness in himself he had not felt since childhood. A softness he had forgotten was possible. He understood finally what myosin meant. When you stop controlling every moment, the moment begins to carry you. When you stop pushing the river of your life, it shows you where to go. And this gentle truth is now offered to you. There is nothing you must do to feel peace. Nothing you must control to feel calm. Nothing you must chase to feel whole. Let your breath flow like the river. Let your thoughts move without grabbing them. Let your body settle into the place where it naturally wants to rest. The harder you try to relax, the more tension you create. Relaxation arrives the moment you stop forcing it. You are the river. You always have been. Let yourself flow. There is a small pond behind the temple where I used to practice many years ago. It was nothing remarkable. No grand waterfall, no rare flowers, no dramatic scenery. Just a round pool of water surrounded by moss, reeds, and stones smoothed by time. Yet the old teacher who guided my early training often brought students there. We would sit on a wooden bench facing the still water, and he would speak of clarity. Not the clarity of ideas, not the clarity of logic, but the clarity of mind that appears when we stop disturbing ourselves. One morning he held a long bamboo stick and stepped toward the edge of the pond. Several of us watched curiously. Without a word, he plunged the stick into the water and swirled it in a wide circle. The bottom of the pond erupted in a cloud of brown silt. Mud spread outward until the whole surface turned cloudy and opaque. "What do you see?" he asked us. We looked at the water. Nothing was clear. The surface shimmered like a sheet of dull glass. No reflection, no depth. One student said, "The pond is dirty." The teacher shook his head. "No, the pond is disturbed." He stepped back and planted the stick upright in the earth. Then he said the words that have stayed with me for a lifetime. "This is the mind when you interfere with it." He motioned for us to sit, and we all settled beside the water. Then he said nothing else. Minutes passed. The mud in the pond began to settle. First, faint shadows appeared beneath the surface, then shapes. Then the stones at the bottom grew visible. Then the reflection of the sky reappeared, soft and shimmering. The pond cleared by itself. We did nothing. Our teacher finally spoke again. He pointed at the now clear surface. "This is what happens when you stop stirring," he said quietly. "The mind becomes clear not by force but by its own nature. You only need to stop disturbing it. Tonight, as you drift deeper into calm, I want you to remember this simple truth. Your mind is not your enemy. It is not broken. It is not something you need to fix or control. The only thing that prevents you from feeling peace is the constant stirring. The thoughts you chase, the fears you replay, the memories you tug on, the worries you try to solve in the dark. All of this is stirring. But just as with the pond, you do not need to eliminate the mud. You do not need to fight the silt. You only need to stop agitating the water. This is what stillness means. Not a mind empty of thoughts, but a mind that is no longer being shaken by force. Let me tell you a story that makes this clearer. There was once a monk named Haru, who struggled terribly with his practice. Whenever he sat to meditate, his legs ached, his back complained, and his mind raced as if 1,000 birds were trapped inside his skull. He tried everything. He tried breathing harder, then softer. He tried visualizing mountains. He tried repeating sacred words. He tried sitting longer than everyone else, forcing himself to endure. But the harder he tried, the louder his mind became. One day, exhausted and frustrated, he approached the abbot of the temple. "Master," he said, "my mind will not settle. I cannot meditate. I cannot find stillness. What is wrong with me?" The abbot looked at him with kind eyes. "Nothing," he said. Haru was stunned. Nothing? But I feel trapped inside my own thinking. The abbot gestured for him to follow. They walked toward the same pond I told you about, though this was many years before I arrived at the temple. When they reached the water, the abbot said, "Sit." Haru sat. "Look at the pond," the abbot said. "Tell me what you see." "It is still," Haru said. The abbot nodded. Then he picked up a handful of stones and tossed them into the center. Ripples burst outward. The surface broke apart. The reflection of the sky vanished. "This," the abbot said, "is your mind when you resist it." Then he tossed several more stones in, more ripples, more chaos. "But I am not doing this on purpose," Haru protested. "Exactly," the abbot said. "Your thoughts and fears and memories are like stones thrown into the water. But you make it worse by trying to force them to stop. You splash at the surface with your hands, trying to smooth it. But splashing only makes the ripples stronger." He reached into the water with his hand and swirled it violently. "This is what you do each night when you try to sleep. You stir the water, then fight the disturbance that you yourself created." Haru stared at the pond, ashamed. The abbot softened his voice. "Now watch." He pulled his hand from the water. The ripples moved outward. The waves weakened. The pond grew calm again. The reflection returned. "Do you see?" the abbot said. "The pond knows how to be still. Your mind knows how to be still too. You only need to stop stirring." Haru closed his eyes, and for the first time he stopped trying to control the moment. He stopped trying to be a perfect monk. He stopped trying to silence his thoughts. He simply sat. Something shifted inside him. A slow, gentle settling like dust drifting downward in a beam of light. His breath eased naturally. His shoulders softened. His forehead relaxed. He felt as if he were sinking into himself, not with effort, but with surrender. Hours later, he opened his eyes. The abbot was still sitting beside him, watching the pond. "Master," Haru whispered, "I felt something. I didn't try to reach it, but it came." The abbot smiled. "That is the way of things. Peace comes when you stop demanding it. This story, simple as it is, holds a truth you can take with you right now. Whatever thoughts you have, let them be. Whatever emotions arise, let them exist without pushing them away. Whatever memories appear, allow them to drift like fallen leaves on water. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to analyze them. Just watch. Let the mud settle. Let your mind become clear in its own time, in its own way. This is the wisdom of not interfering. Right now, as your body rests, try something soft and subtle. Imagine your mind as a pond. Not a perfect pond. Not a pond free of silt. Just a pond at the end of a long day. Thoughts may drift in like twigs or bits of leaves. Emotions may swirl like currents. But you do not need to intervene. There is a deeper intelligence inside you. It knows how to return to calm. It knows how to let go. It knows how to rest. You don't need to fix your mind. You only need to stop shaking it. And in this stillness, something begins to glow from within. A gentle light, soft as the first star rising in the evening sky. This is your natural clarity. It has been waiting beneath the surface all along. All it needed was space. All it needed was permission. Tonight, in this quiet moment, give yourself that permission. Let everything settle. Let the pond clear itself. Let the mind return to its original stillness. There is nothing more you need to do. Chapter 2. The wisdom of acceptance meeting reality without resistance. The bridge that isn't there anymore. There is a moment in every life when the world does something unexpected. The plan we counted on dissolves. The road we trusted shifts beneath our feet. The bridge we needed simply isn't there anymore. When this happens, most of us react in the same way. We tense. We argue with reality. We replay everything that should have happened. We tell ourselves stories of unfairness, of loss, of disappointment. We try with all our strength to make the world match the picture in our mind. But reality never loses these arguments, and we suffer not because of what happened, but because of our refusal to accept that it has already happened. Tonight, let me take you into a small valley where a man named Ren learned this lesson in the simplest and most honest way possible. Ren lived in a quiet farming village where a narrow wooden bridge crossed a steady stream. The bridge was old, built long before Ren was born, and it was the only easy path to the marketplace on the other side of the valley. Every morning he crossed that bridge to sell vegetables from his garden. Every evening he crossed it again to return home. The bridge to him was not simply wood and nails. It was routine. It was safety. It was predictability. It was proof that the world operated according to his expectations. But one morning, after a long night, a flood had taken it during the night. Only scattered planks remained, some caught in branches, some floating downstream, some resting in the mud. Ren stood completely still, unable to breathe. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. He walked to the edge of the water, searching for a mistake. Perhaps he was early. Perhaps the mist hid the bridge. Perhaps some trick of light distorted his vision. But there was no trick, no bridge, no familiar crossing, no easy path ahead. Ren sank to his knees in the wet grass. His basket of vegetables tilted to one side. A few tomatoes rolled into the stream and disappeared. A deep frustration filled his chest. How could the bridge vanish? Why now? Why today? Why him? He clenched his fists so tightly that his fingers ached. He stared at the empty space where the bridge had been and whispered again, "This should not be happening." A traveler approached from the path behind him. She looked at the broken remains of the bridge, then at Ren's tense form. "You seem troubled," she said. Ren snapped. "The bridge is gone. Do you not see that? The market is on the other side. My customers are waiting. My whole morning is ruined." The traveler stepped beside him. "Yes," she said softly. "The bridge is gone. It washed away during the night." Ren glared at the water as if staring hard enough would force the planks to reassemble. "It shouldn't have happened," he muttered. The traveler knelt beside him, letting her fingers brush the cool surface of the stream. "The bridge is gone," she repeated gently. "Yet you speak as if it still exists." Ren turned to her, confused and annoyed. "I'm not blind. I know it's gone." "No," she said, "you don't. You know that it is physically gone, but you refuse to accept that it is gone. You are arguing with something that has already happened." Ren looked away, unwilling to admit the truth in her words. She continued in a voice so calm that it seemed to slow the morning around them. "When we resist reality, the suffering we feel is not caused by the situation. It is caused by the distance between what we want and what is." Ren tried to swallow, but his throat tightened. The frustration in his chest expanded until it became something heavy and sharp. The traveler stood and began walking along the edge of the stream. "Come," she said. "If you walk far enough upstream, you can cross where the water is shallow." Ren hesitated. His mind clung to the idea of how things were supposed to be. A part of him kept insisting that the bridge should magically reappear, that the day should proceed according to plan, that reality should rearrange itself to match his expectations. But nothing changed. The stream continued flowing. The morning continued brightening. The marketplace continued waiting on the other side. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, Ren picked up his basket and followed her. They walked for nearly an hour. The ground was muddy, the path was uneven. Twice Ren nearly slipped. The journey felt too long, too slow, too inconvenient. "See," he muttered, "this is difficult. The bridge made everything easier." The traveler smiled. "Of course the bridge made things easier, but that does not change the fact that it is gone. Ease and difficulty are not the same as right and wrong." Ren exhaled sharply. "What do you mean?" She stopped and gestured toward the stream. "When we judge a situation as terrible simply because it is not the way we wanted, we miss the truth. The truth is much simpler. The bridge is gone. That is all. You add the rest, the frustration, the disappointment, the sense of injustice. And if I don't add those things," Ren asked, "then you simply walk upstream and cross where you can." They continued walking. At a shallow bend, the traveler stepped into the water. It reached only to her ankles. The stones beneath the surface were smooth and cool. She crossed easily, then waited for Ren to follow. Ren hesitated. He looked at the water. He looked at the path. He looked back at the empty space where the bridge had once stood, now far behind them. He felt something soften inside him, slowly, subtly, like frost melting from a leaf. Heat. He stepped into the stream. The water was cold. He wobbled at first, but the traveler offered her hand. Together they reached the other side. You see, she said, reality was not the problem. The only problem was your resistance to it. Ren looked at the muddy footprints behind them. He looked at the calm path ahead. He looked at the morning sky growing brighter. He let out a long breath he didn't know he had been holding. You're right, he said quietly. I was fighting something that had already happened. She nodded. Acceptance is not weakness. It is simply the moment you stop insisting that reality must obey your plans. Ren felt the truth settle into him like warm tea spreading through his chest. When they finally reached the marketplace, the morning was already half gone. But Ren was strangely calm. Customers gathered around him. They apologized for his difficult morning. He smiled and said, "It wasn't difficult. It was simply different." Later, as the sun began to set, Ren carried his empty basket home by a new path. A longer path, a muddier path, but a path he accepted. And because he accepted it, the walk felt lighter than he expected. This is the quiet power of acceptance. It transforms the world not by changing it, but by changing how we meet it. When you stop resisting the moment, the tension in your body softens. When you stop insisting that something should not be happening, your mind begins to breathe again. When you stop arguing with the past, the present becomes available to you. Right now, as you rest, notice the places in your life where the bridge has disappeared. Maybe it is something you lost. Maybe it is a plan that unraveled. Maybe it is a version of your life that no longer exists. Take a slow breath. You do not need to rebuild the bridge tonight. You do not need to force the river to return what it has taken. You do not need to fight anything. Just acknowledge what is here. Let the moment be what it is. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is stopping the war within yourself so you can see clearly where to go next. Like Ren, you can walk upstream. You can find a shallow crossing. You can take the next step with a lighter heart. Your life is not broken. It has simply changed shape. And when you stop resisting, you will discover that the path forward has been waiting for you all along. Part 2. The Tea Master and the Spilled Water. There is a kind of peace that does not come from having everything under control. It comes from meeting each moment as it arrives without demanding that it behave a certain way. This peace is simple, but it is not always easy. To understand it, let me take you to a quiet tea house on the outskirts of a small village. A place where the steam of boiling water rises like morning mist, where the walls hold the soft scent of tatami, and where the gentle movements of a tea master reveal more wisdom than 1,000 lectures. The tea master's name was Shayan. He was known for his calm presence, his steady hands, and the elegance with which he performed the tea ceremony. For him, each movement was a meditation. Each breath carried intention. Each small gesture expressed a lifetime of practice. People said that when you entered Shayan's tea house, the world softened. Your worries lost their shape. Your thoughts grew quiet. Time slowed its pace. One spring afternoon, Shayan prepared for a special ceremony. A local governor, a man of influence and pride, was coming to visit. Shayan wanted everything to be perfect, not because he feared the governor, but because he believed that each guest deserved complete attention. He cleaned the tea bowls with care. He arranged a single branch of plum blossoms in the alcove. He reheated the water until it made the soft, familiar sound known as wind in the pines. His young apprentice, Kaito, assisted him. Kaito was earnest, eager, and anxious to please, but his hands trembled easily. His thoughts raced ahead of his actions. He wanted to be perfect, not out of devotion to the art, but from fear of disappointing the master he admired. As the hour approached, tension filled the small tea house like a subtle fog. Kaito carried fresh water from the well in a wooden bucket. He walked carefully, focusing so intensely on not spilling a drop that he forgot to watch his steps. When he reached the doorway, his foot caught on the threshold. The bucket tipped. The water poured across the tatami like a sudden rainstorm. The flowers in the alcove trembled from the splash. The carefully arranged utensils scattered. The scroll on the wall darkened as water touched its lower edge. Kaito froze. His heart pounded so loudly he could hear it echo in his head. He stared at the floor as if hoping time would reverse itself. The perfect ceremony he had imagined moments before had collapsed in an instant. Shion stepped into the room. He looked at the flood spreading across the mats. He looked at the overturned bucket. And finally, he looked at trembling Kaito. The boy bowed deeply. "Master," he whispered, I ruined everything." Shion didn't speak right away. He simply observed the room the way one observes a sudden change in weather. Not with anger, not with frustration, but with presence. Then, in a calm voice, he said, "We needed to clean these mats anyway." Kaito lifted his head in surprise. There was no sharpness in Shion's tone, no blame, no disappointment, only simple acknowledgement. "But the governor will be here any moment," Kaito stammered. Shion nodded. "Then he will join us in the moment that exists now, not the moment we planned." He knelt on the wet tatami and began lifting the soaked mats with gentle hands. "Kaito," he said softly, "help me." The boy hesitated, still dizzy with embarrassment. But he dropped to his knees and began helping the master carry the mats outside. The afternoon sun warmed the damp fibers. Birds chirped in the plum trees. The world did not share Kaito's panic. In fact, it barely noticed the incident at all. But inside Kaito, a storm raged. "How can you be so calm?" he asked as they worked. "This was supposed to be perfect. Everything is ruined." Shion paused. He looked at his apprentice with eyes that held both kindness and clarity. "Ruined?" he repeated. "The water spilled, that is all. But the ceremony has changed, that is all. But the governor, he will arrive into whatever moment we offer him, and we will offer him this moment, not another." Kaito felt tears prick his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Shion placed a hand on his shoulder. "My boy," he said gently, "you are apologizing for reality. That is a very heavy burden to carry." Kaito blinked. "What do you mean?" Shion lifted one of the mats, letting the water drip off its edge. "What has already happened is beyond apology," he said. "It is already done. No amount of regret or worry can undo it. The only question that matters now is, how will we meet what is here?" The words settled into the air like falling petals. In that moment, the governor's arrival was announced. His footsteps approached the tea house. Kaito panicked. "We can't do the ceremony. The room isn't ready." Shion wiped his hands on his robe. "The room is exactly as it needs to be." He walked toward the entrance. Kaito followed with his heart pounding, expecting frustration or disappointment from the governor. But Shion bowed deeply. "Welcome," he said. "Today we will share tea under unusual circumstances. Please join us." The governor stepped inside. He looked at the empty floor where the mats had been. He noticed the dampness. He noticed the scattered utensils. He raised an eyebrow. "What happened here?" he asked. Shion smiled. "Life," he said. The governor let out a short laugh. His stern face softened. "Well then," he said, "show me how tea is served in such a moment." Shion prepared a simple ceremony on the wooden boards, using only what was necessary. No elaborate arrangement, no formality, just presence. The governor watched closely. He felt the calm ripple out from Shion's movements like gentle waves across a pond. When the tea was finally served, the governor took a slow sip. He set the bowl down. "This," he said, "is the most peaceful tea I have ever tasted." Kaito stared in disbelief. After the ceremony, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Kaito approached Shion. "Master," he said, "how were you able to stay calm? How could you meet the spilled water without anger?" Shion lifted the mats from outside, now nearly dry. He carried them into the tea house, speaking as he worked. "Feelings arise," he said. "When the water spilled, disappointment rose in me, just as waves rise on a windy day. But I did not hold the disappointment. I let it move through me." "You didn't try to stop the feeling?" "No, I simply did not attach a story to it." Kaito frowned. "What story?" that the spill should not have happened, that the day was ruined, that perfection was lost, that someone was to blame. Those stories create suffering. The water itself creates none. Kaito felt something shift inside him, something small yet profound. So acceptance means not adding stories. Cheyenne nodded. Acceptance is seeing clearly what is here without decorating it with our fears or expectations. And once we accept, Kaito asked him, what do we do? Then, Cheyenne said, we simply take the next step. He placed the final mat back on the floor. That is all life ever asks of us. Kaito looked at his hands. They were no longer trembling. His chest no longer felt tight. He realized that the ceremony had not been ruined. It had been transformed. It had become something real, something honest, free of the weight of perfection. Later that night, as Kaito swept the wooden floor, he found himself smiling. Part 3. The Farmer and the Storm That Came Twice. There is a kind of wisdom that can only grow in the soil of everyday life, not in temples, not in books, not in meditation halls, but in the places where hands touch earth, where seasons turn with quiet certainty, and where the natural world follows its ancient rhythm without asking for our approval. In a small valley surrounded by green mountains, a farmer named Isamu tended a humble piece of land passed down through generations. His fields were modest, his tools simple, his days steady. He planted in spring, he nurtured through summer, he harvested in autumn, he rested in winter. Each year carried the same rhythm, but no year was ever the same. Isamu understood this. He respected the unpredictable shape of the seasons, yet even he was not prepared for the year when the sky forgot its timing. It began with drought. Spring came dry and harsh. The rains that usually soaked the soil simply did not arrive. The clouds drifted across the sky like silent travelers who had lost their way. Isamu walked through his fields each morning, feeling the soil crack beneath his feet. His young rice plants drooped like tired children. The vegetable seeds he had planted barely pushed through the dry earth. His neighbors gathered beneath the shade of a lone cedar tree, complaining loudly. "This is a disaster," one said, "when the worst spring we've seen." "The gods must be angry," another murmured. "All our work is wasted," a third lamented. Isamu listened but said nothing. He looked at his fields with the sober eyes of someone who accepted what he saw. He did not pray for the rain to come. He did not argue with the sky. He did not curse the season. He simply took a breath and began digging deeper channels from the mountain spring that still trickled with water. It was hard work. The sun burned his neck. His hands blistered. The ground resisted the shovel, but he worked quietly without complaint, carrying buckets of water to his crops. Not enough to restore them, but enough to keep them alive. Weeks passed. The drought continued. His neighbors fretted. They panicked. Some gave up entirely, letting their fields wither while they drowned in worry. Isamu continued digging, continued carrying, continued showing up to the moment that existed, not the moment he wished for. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime of dry heat, the sky broke open. But the relief did not come gently. A storm arrived so fierce that the clouds seemed to burst all at once. Rain poured down in sheets. The mountain streams roared to life. Water rushed across the land with unstoppable force. "It's too much," the farmers shouted. "We prayed for rain, not a flood." Isamu assessed the situation calmly. His channels, which had sustained his crops through the drought, now threatened to drown them. The water flowed so heavily that the young rice plants bent beneath the weight. Rather than panic, Isamu began blocking the channels with stones. He opened new paths to guide the excess water away. He built small ridges with his hands to protect the most vulnerable seedlings. The storm raged for days. His neighbors were overwhelmed by fear, by frustration, by the thought that the sky was punishing them twice in one season. "First too little," they cried, "now too much." They stood beneath their roofs watching the destruction, shaking their heads, calling the weather unfair, cruel, unforgiving. But Isamu walked his fields, soaked to the bone, responding not to what he hoped for, but to what stood before him. When the rain finally eased, the land looked battered, but Isamu's crops were still standing. not thriving, not untouched, but alive. His neighbors gathered again beneath the cedar tree. They looked exhausted, defeated. "How did your field survive?" one asked. "We lost almost everything," another admitted. Isamu shrugged gently. "I worked with what the sky gave." "That's easy to say now," they snapped. "But how did you keep calm through all of it?" Isamu thought for a long moment before answering. "When the drought came," he said, "it was foolish to wish for rain before its time. So I worked with the dry earth. When the storms came," he continued, "it was foolish to wish for sunshine while the sky was full of water. So I worked with the rain." His neighbors stared at him. "But weren't you afraid?" one asked. "Weren't you angry?" "Fear rose," Isamu said. "Anger rose too, but they were just visitors. I did not invite them to stay." The group fell quiet. Isamu knelt and picked up a handful of soil, now damp and rich again. "The weather does not answer to our demands," he said. "Our suffering comes not from drought or flood, but from thinking that the season should obey our preferences." The farmers exchanged uncertain glances. They had spent months fighting reality, complaining about the drought, then complaining about the rain. They had stood still when they needed to move and moved only when it was too late. Isamu continued, "When we call something terrible, we blind ourselves to what can be done. When we say this should not happen, we refuse to see what is already happening. But when we accept the moment as it is, the next action becomes clear." He tossed the soil back to the ground. "Drought is drought," he said. "Rain is rain. My judgment of them does not change their nature. It only changes my ability to respond." One of the farmers sighed deeply. "So acceptance is the key." Isamu shook his head gently. "Acceptance is not a key. It is the door. Once you walk through it, the world becomes workable again." Years later, Isamu would teach his grandchildren the same idea while tending the fields with them. He would say, "The seasons are our teachers. They show us how to live. When they bring hardship, we respond with clarity. When they bring abundance, we respond with gratitude. But we do not argue with them. A season never becomes what we wish. It only becomes what it is." Tonight, as you rest, think of the storms in your own life. Maybe you faced something unexpected. Maybe the ground beneath you shifted suddenly. Maybe you felt the drought of a long waiting or the flood of too much change at once. Take a slow breath. You are not required to like what happened. You are not required to pretend it was easy. You are not required to call it good. You are only invited to accept that it already happened. From this acceptance, the next action becomes possible. From this acceptance, a little more peace is born. From this acceptance, the storm loses its power to break you. Like Isamu, you can respond to the moment that exists, not the moment you wish for. And slowly, gently, the landscape of your life will become workable again. Not perfect, not predictable, but real. And real life, when accepted fully, becomes a place where calm can grow, even in the seasons you never asked for. Chapter 3. Seeing without judgment. Meeting the world before the mind aims. Part 1. The flower before you name it. There is a moment, small, almost invisible, that happens each time you look at something, before the mind labels it, before the thoughts rush in, before your opinions rise like waves on the surface of understanding. Before all of that, there is a pure, direct experience, a color, a shape, a movement, a sound, a sensation, simple, unfiltered, alive. This moment is often missed. We don't lose it through failure, but through habit. The habit of judging, comparing, analyzing, and naming everything the instant it appears. Tonight, let me guide you into that quiet space before judgment. The space where the world becomes vivid again, where perception meets reality without the constant commentary of the mind. And to begin, let me tell you a story. In a mountain monastery known for its silence, a young monk named Aki arrived with a mind full of knowledge. He had read many sutras. He had memorized teachings from great masters. He knew the philosophy of Zen as if it were a map he could recite with his eyes closed. But despite all this knowledge, he felt no peace. He could speak elegantly about emptiness, but his mind was full. He could explain the meaning of stillness, but his heart was restless. He could discuss the nature of reality, but nothing felt real. Seeing his struggle, the abbot, an old monk named Ryojun, decided to help him. One spring morning, when mist clung to the moss-covered stones and the sky was the soft color of beginning light, the abbot invited Aki for a walk. They moved through the garden in silence. Drops of dew sparkled on blades of grass. Birds announced the new day with bright, effortless voices. Eventually, they stopped beside a plum tree just beginning to bloom. A single branch held a cluster of pale flowers, white with a hint of pink at the edges. Ryojun pointed to them. "What do you see?" he asked. Aki answered quickly, confidently. "I see plum blossoms, master. They are symbols of resilience. In poetry, they represent purity and endurance. This variety blooms early each year, their fragrance." Ryojun lifted a hand. "Enough." Aki swallowed his words. The abbot's voice was gentle but firm. "You have told me everything you know about the blossoms, but you have not yet told me what you see." Aki frowned. "That is what I see." "No," Ryojun said calmly. "That is what you think. There is a difference." He stepped closer to the branch, his eyes soft. When a child sees a flower, he does not say plum blossom. He does not speak of symbolism or history. He sees color. He sees shape. He sees light touching petals that were not there yesterday. He turned to Aki. "You have not seen this flower. You have only seen your ideas." Aki felt heat rise to his face. His pride struggled, but his honesty whispered truth. The abbot was right. Ryojun continued. "Thoughts are not the enemy. Names are not the enemy. But they become a barrier when they appear too soon, when they cover your experience like thick clouds hiding the sun." Aki looked at the blossoms again. They seemed distant, as if seen through the tinted glass of his own mind. The abbot spoke softly. "Try again, but this time look without reaching for a word." Aki took a slow breath. At first, all he could see were the labels. Plum blossom, spring, flower. But he let those labels drift past like leaves on a stream. He softened his gaze. He released the need to understand. He let his senses guide him instead of his knowledge. And then suddenly something shifted. The petals were no longer plum blossoms. They were luminous shapes, pale, tender, alive in a way that required no meaning. A faint breeze moved through them, and for a heartbeat, Aki felt the moment directly. Not as an idea, but as reality. He blinked as if waking from a dream. "I saw them," he whispered. Ryojun nodded. "Yes, for a moment you did. That moment is Zen." Aki felt something open inside him, a space that had been crowded for years. "But master," he asked softly, "how do I see that way again?" By noticing the habits of your mind," Ryojun replied. "You must learn to recognize the moment you begin naming, judging, comparing. When you notice the label forming, pause. Look again." Aki gazed at the blossoms once more. This time the labels rose quickly. Beautiful, small, delicate, early bloom. But he saw the labels rising. He watched them appear. He did not push them away, but he did not fuse with them either. And in that small gap, there was clarity. A moment of pure perception. A world without judgment. He exhaled slowly. Ryojun placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is the practice. Seeing the world before the mind paints over it. Seeing people before you judge them. Seeing yourself before you compare or condemn." They continued through the garden, and though the walk was short, it marked the beginning of Aki's real training. Not the training of intellect, but the training of perception. "Tonight, as you rest, I want you to try something simple. Look around the room or simply imagine what surrounds you. Your pillow, your blanket, the ceiling, the shadows, the light. Before the mind names them, they are just shapes, just colors, just sensations. This is direct experience, pure, effortless, free of judgment. Then notice how quickly the mind begins to describe. This pillow is soft. This light is dim. This room is too quiet. I like this. I don't like that. This is good. This is bad." Each thought is like a small thread being woven between you and what is real. There is nothing wrong with the thread. It only becomes a problem when you forget that it is not the thing itself. Try this with your breath. Feel the air enter your body, just that. Before you think inhalation, Before you think slow breath, before you think I am relaxing, there is simply the sensation. Coolness at the nostrils, movement in the chest, soft expansion in the ribs. This is the breath before the label. Try this with a feeling inside you, perhaps a weight in the chest or a subtle restlessness or a sense of warmth. Before you name it as anxiety, before you call it tension, before you judge it as unwanted, there is simply a sensation, a movement, a presence. Seeing without judgment does not mean being passive. It does not mean ignoring your thoughts. It means recognizing the difference between reality and the stories wrapped around reality. The flower is just the flower. The breath is just the breath. The moment is just the moment. When you peel away the labels, even for a few seconds, you touch something clear and simple. A world unburdened by your opinions. And in that clarity, something deep inside you can finally relax. The mind grows quiet not because you force it to, but because judgment has loosened its grip. For now, let the world be as Aki saw the plum blossoms. Light, shape, movement. Nothing to interpret, nothing to judge, nothing to fix. Just this moment, simple and unfiltered. Let it be enough. Art 2. The Man at the Gate. There is a kind of blindness we carry without realizing it. Not a blindness of the eyes, but a blindness of the mind. It happens the moment we replace what is actually in front of us with what we believe is in front of us. A label, a judgment, a story, a memory, a fear. All of these rise so quickly that we rarely notice the switch. What we see becomes what we think, not what truly exists. Tonight, let me share the story of a man who arrived at a temple gate, and how an abbot taught a lesson that still travels quietly through Zen circles today. At the edge of a quiet village stood a small temple tended by an abbot named Tensei. He was known not for dramatic teachings or complex philosophy, but for a simple way of seeing people. A way that went beneath their reputation, beneath their mistakes, beneath the labels others stuck onto them. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a man approached the temple gate. His clothes were worn, his hair unkempt, his face hard, lined not by age but by a difficult life. There was something heavy in the way he walked, as if each step carried the weight of old mistakes. Several monks saw him from the courtyard, and one whispered sharply, "That's Goro. He is a thief. He was released from prison not long ago." Another monk frowned. "He stole from people in this village. Why would he come here?" A third said, "He must be sent away before trouble follows." Before they could do anything, Abbot Tensei stepped forward and approached the man at the gate. Goro bowed awkwardly. "Sir, I need food and a place to rest tonight. Just one night. That is all." His voice carried both hope and shame. It was the voice of someone expecting rejection. Tensei looked at him for a long moment, not with hesitation, not with fear, but with the uncomplicated gaze of someone seeing a human being and nothing more. "Come," the abbot said. "Dinner will be served soon." The monks stared in disbelief. Goro stepped inside, bowing once again. His shoulders loosened as if a lifetime of tension released in a single breath. The youngest monk approached the abbot quietly. "Master, why did you welcome him? You know who he is." Tensei smiled. "I know what has been said about him, but I know nothing about the man standing before me right now." "But he is a thief," the monk insisted. Tensei raised an eyebrow. "Is he stealing at this moment?" "No." "Then right now he is simply a hungry man. Let us meet him as he is, not as we fear him to be." The monks fell silent. During dinner, Goro ate quietly, keeping to himself. He thanked each person who handed him food. He avoided eye contact as if ashamed of taking space. Tensei watched him with the same gentle presence he offered to every guest. After the meal, Goro approached the abbot. "I'll leave at dawn," he said. "Thank you for allowing me inside." "You may stay longer if you need to," Tensei replied. Goro shook his head. "I am not a good man, abbot. The monks were right to distrust me." Tensei gestured for him to sit beside him beneath a lantern glowing with soft light. "Tell me," the abbot said, "who taught you that you are not a good man?" Goro swallowed. "My father, the guards, the villagers, everyone I've ever met." "And do you believe them?" Goro hesitated. "I have done terrible things." Tensei nodded slowly. "But that does not answer my question. I did not ask what you have done. I asked whether you believe you are nothing more than your past actions. Goro looked down at his hands. The lantern light flickered across the scars on his knuckles. I don't know, he whispered. It's all I've ever been told. Tensei picked up a stone from the ground and held it in his palm. This stone has been in the river for a long time, he said. The water has shaped it, smoothed it, worn it down. Its past shaped it, yes. But it is not the river. It is not the water. It is just a stone in my hand. He offered it to Goro. You too have been shaped by your past, but you are not your past. You are the one standing here now. Goro took the stone and held it tightly. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Goro said, "No one has ever spoken to me like this." Tensei smiled softly. That is because most people look at labels, not at life. Goro stayed 3 days at the temple. During that time, he helped chop wood, fetch water, and mend robes. He worked quietly, grateful for every small task. Some monks softened toward him. Others continued to avoid him. Old habits of judgment are difficult to let go of, but Tensei treated him no differently from any other visitor. On the 4th morning, Goro approached the abbot with tears in his eyes. "I should go," he said, "but before I leave, tell me honestly, Master, why did you trust me?" Tensei looked up at him calmly. "I did not trust you," he said. Goro froze. A sharp pain spread through his chest, but Tensei continued. "I trusted myself to see clearly. I trusted that the man standing before me was not the same man described by others. I trusted the truth of this moment more than the stories from the past." He touched Goro's arm. "I do not need to trust your past. I need only meet who you are now." Goro bowed deeply, tears dropping onto the ground. When he left the temple, the monks watched him disappear down the road. Tensei turned to them. "You judged him by his worst moments," he said. "But he judged himself the same way. Until someone sees you without judgment, you cannot learn to see yourself clearly." One monk asked, "Master, what if he falls back into old ways?" Tensei smiled gently. "If he falls, then he falls. But for 3 days he became someone else. And sometimes 3 days of being seen clearly is enough to change the direction of a life. Tonight, as you rest, consider this. How often do you see the world through the lens of labels? How often do you meet people not as they are, but as your mind insists they must be? And more importantly, how often do you see yourself through the harshest labels you carry? Useless, not enough, broken, too much, too little. These are not truths. These are old stones you've been carrying. You can put them down. Right now there is no story to believe, no judgment to hold, no label to defend. There is only this breath, this body, this moment. You can meet yourself the way Abbot Tensei met Goro, simply, directly, without the weight of the past. And in that space, without judgment, something soft begins to grow. A gentler way of seeing, a clearer way of being. A quiet sense of worthiness that has nothing to do with perfection. Just presence, just life, just you. Enough as you are. Part 3. The sound you've never actually heard. There is a strange thing that happens when we wake up from a dream. For a brief moment, the world feels raw and vivid. Colors seem brighter, the air feels sharper, sounds appear clearer as if we're hearing them for the first time. And then, just as quickly, the mind begins naming everything. Ceiling, window, morning, pillow, and the magic fades. We return to living through labels instead of through experience. Not because anything changed outside us, but because the mind wrapped the world in its usual commentary. Tonight, let me take you into a story about a monk who discovered something remarkable. He had never actually heard the world as it was. He had only heard the world as he thought it was. In a large Zen monastery built among swaying bamboo, a young monk named Daigo worked as the bell ringer. His task was simple: to ring the temple bell at dawn, at noon, and again at dusk. The bell was enormous, cast from dark bronze, etched with patterns of clouds and waves. Its tone was deep and rich, echoing through the valley like a slow heartbeat. Daigo loved the bell. Or rather, he loved the idea of the bell. He took pride in striking it with precision. He made sure the sound carried across the monastery in the exact way the elder monks had taught him. But he never actually listened. One afternoon, while Daigo was sweeping fallen leaves from the stone path, the temple master, an elderly monk named Kon, approached him. "Daigo," the master said gently, "you ring the bell well, but tell me, have you ever heard it?" Daigo laughed. "Of course, master, I hear it every day." Kun's eyes softened, full of quiet amusement. He said, "you hear the bell, but have you heard the sound?" Daigo frowned. "I don't understand." Kun smiled in the patient way of someone who has seen this confusion many times. "Come," he said, "bring your mallet." The old master led Daigo to the bell tower, a wooden structure open to the wind. Afternoon light fell in long beams across the floor. "Strike the bell," Kun instructed. Daigo bowed, lifted the mallet, and struck the bronze with practiced form. Boom! The sound spread outward in a long, resonant wave. "Now," Kun said, "tell me what you heard." Daigo answered quickly, "It is deep, it is loud, it echoes." The master shook his head. "That is what you think about the sound. That is not the sound itself." Daigo's confusion deepened. Kun motioned for him to sit on the wooden bench. Again, Daigo struck the bell a second time. Boom! The air vibrated around them. Kun closed his eyes. Daigo watched him carefully, noticing how still the master became, as if he wasn't merely listening but merging with the vibration. When the sound finally faded, Kun opened his eyes. Daigo," he said softly, "you hear bell, you hear echo, you hear deep, you hear your thoughts about the sound, but you have not heard the sound itself." Daigo lowered his gaze. He felt both embarrassed and strangely curious. "How do I hear the sound itself?" Kun nodded toward the bell. "This time, listen without naming. Listen without describing. Listen without comparing to the last strike. Let the sound be sound, not something your mind must explain." Daigo swallowed. He lifted the mallet again and struck the bell. Boom! The sound expanded like a ripple moving through the air. Daigo focused intensely, trying not to think, but the thoughts came anyway. Beautiful, long, fading, warm. Kun spoke without looking at him. "You are thinking." Daigo tensed. "I'm trying not to, master." Kun smiled. "That is just more thinking." He placed a wrinkled hand on Daigo's shoulder. "Do not fight the thoughts. Just let them pass through like birds flying across the sky. Let the sound reach you before the mind touches it." This time Kun struck the bell himself. Boom. And he whispered, "Let the sound come to you." Daigo inhaled slowly. He softened his body. He stopped trying. He simply sat in the wave of sound. And for a moment, a brief, delicate moment, he felt something different. A vibration, a kind of openness, a presence that was not filtered through thought. Then the moment passed. Kun nodded. "You touched it," he said gently. "Just for a few seconds, but you touched it." Daigo looked at his hands, which felt strangely alive. "What was that?" he asked softly. "Direct experience," the master replied. The sound before the mind claims it." The next morning, Daigo rang the bell at dawn. But this time something was different. He struck the bronze. The sound blossomed outward. He didn't force himself to silence his thoughts. He simply let the sound be sound. And he listened, a subtle shimmer in the air, a wave that vibrated against his chest, a warm hum that changed texture as it faded. The words still rose, deep echo, beautiful. But he noticed them early before they fully formed, and he did not follow them. For the first time, he heard the bell the way a child might hear it, without history, without meaning, without judgment, just pure sound. And in that sound, his mind rested, his body rested, his breath rested. Something inside him unclenched. Kun, who had been watching from a distance, approached him after the ceremony. "Master," Daigo said quietly, "something shifted. I can't explain it." Kun nodded. "That is because explanation is part of the old way of seeing. This new way is made of noticing, not describing." Daigo looked up. "Master, why does hearing the sound clearly make me feel at peace?" Kun folded his hands behind his back. "When you meet life without judgment," he said, "life reveals itself as it is. And what is revealed is always simpler, gentler, more spacious than what the mind imagines. He gestured to the bell. You are not peaceful because of the sound. You are peaceful because the mind stepped aside. A breeze drifted through the tower, carrying the scent of morning pine. No judgment, Kuhn said softly. No naming, just awareness. He touched Daigo's chest. That is what frees you. Tonight as you rest, try something with me. Listen, not to words, not to thoughts, not to the commentary of the mind, but to the simple hum of your own breathing. Before you name it breath, before you think in, out, there is just a sensation, just movement, just sound. Maybe the faint rustle of air. Maybe the soft rhythm of your chest rising and falling. Maybe the quiet whisper of your exhale. Listen as Daigo learned to listen, before the mind adds its labels. If a thought appears, let it drift. If a judgment rises, let it soften. If a memory intrudes, let it pass like a cloud crossing the sun. You do not need to push anything away. You only need to see it as it is. And when you do, the moment opens. The world becomes clearer, your mind becomes lighter. Judgment tightens, awareness loosens. Judgment divides, awareness includes. Judgment blinds, awareness reveals. Right now you are returning to the simplicity you were born with. The ability to meet sound, sight, breath, and sensation without the heavy weight of commentary. This is how peace begins. Not through effort, not through perfection, but through seeing clearly. Seeing before naming, hearing before thinking, experiencing before judging. Just this moment. Just this breath. Just this life, soft and unfiltered. Enough, exactly as it is. Chapter 4. The Wisdom of Silence. The quiet that still exists beneath every thought. Part 1. The Scholar Who Spoke Too Much. There are many forms of silence. The silence of a deep night. The silence of falling snow. The silence between two people who understand each other without words. But there is another silence. A deeper one. A silence that does not depend on the world around you. A silence that exists even when life is noisy. This silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of struggle. The absence of the mind's constant need to explain, to comment, to control. It is the silence inside you. The silence that cannot be broken by noise because it is made of awareness itself. Let me take you to a place where a scholar learned this lesson in the most unexpected way. The monastery stood high in the mountains, carved into the rocky hillside like a quiet refuge from the world below. The air was thin. The wind carried the scent of pine. A soft hush lingered everywhere, as if the mountains themselves were breathing slowly. One morning, a scholar arrived at the monastery gate. His name was Kiyoshi. He had traveled far to speak with the master known as Jorin. Kiyoshi was proud of his knowledge. He carried scrolls under his arm filled with quotes, diagrams, and delicate notes scribbled during years of study. He believed he understood Zen better than most, but despite his knowledge, a quiet ache had grown inside him. A sense that something essential was missing. He could explain enlightenment, yet he felt no clarity. He could debate philosophy, yet he felt restless. He knew countless teachings, yet he felt far from peaceful. Believing that Jorin could fill the gap, Kiyoshi walked up the steep stone steps toward the meditation hall. When he reached the entrance, the master greeted him with a simple bow. "Welcome," Jorin said. Kiyoshi bowed back, then immediately began speaking. He introduced himself. He explained his long travels. He described his studies. He talked about the sutras he had memorized. He listed the teachers he had met. He presented theories, interpretations, and insights. His words poured out like water from a broken pot. Jorin listened without interruption. He made no sign of approval or disapproval. He did not nod, did not smile, did not frown. He simply stood there, still attentive, silent. After several minutes, when Kiyoshi finally paused to breathe, the master raised a hand. "Come with me," he said softly. They walked to a small room with a low wooden table. Sunlight filtered through paper screens, casting soft patterns across the floor. "Please," Jorin said, "sit." Kiyoshi knelt at the table, ready, eager to resume speaking. But before he could open his mouth, the master placed a pot of tea and 2 cups on the table. He began pouring tea into Kiyoshi's cup. Steam rose gently, filling the air with a warm, earthy scent. The cup began to fill, but Joran kept pouring. The tea reached the brim. Then it spilled over. It dripped onto the table. It spread across the wood. "Master!" Kiyoshi exclaimed. "The cup is full. Stop, it can't hold any more." Joran set the pot down. "Just like your mind," he said. Kiyoshi stared at him. "You come seeking peace," Joran continued, "but your mind is overflowing with ideas, with opinions, with theories, with conclusions." The master's voice was calm, but his words landed with weight. "Nothing new can enter a mind that is already full." Kiyoshi lowered his gaze. For the first time, he had no words. Joran stood and walked toward the open window. A breeze lifted the edges of his robe. "Come," he said, "walk with me." They left the tea room and stepped into a courtyard where bamboo swayed softly. The air was cool. A bird called from somewhere unseen. Joran said nothing. At first, Kiyoshi waited for the master to speak. A question gathered on his tongue, ready to spill out. But Joran walked in silence. Kiyoshi followed. A minute passed, then 2, then 5. The silence felt heavy at first, as if filling the gap where conversation should have been. Kiyoshi resisted the urge to speak. He felt a familiar discomfort. The same discomfort he felt when his mind wasn't occupied, when there was nothing to analyze or comment on. But Joran simply walked. Eventually, they reached a lookout point overlooking the valley. A wide river cut through the land below, reflecting the blue sky. The wind brushed gently against them. Still, Joran said nothing. Kiyoshi waited. His mind grew restless. He wanted to ask a question, to explain his confusion, to seek an answer. But the master did not invite any of that. Instead, he simply stood there, present and still, as if listening to something deeper than sound. Finally, after what felt like an entire afternoon, Joran, "Kiyoshi," he said quietly, "when you fill every silence with words, you cannot hear the world speaking." He gestured toward the valley. "The river has been speaking since you arrived." He pointed to the bamboo. "The wind has been speaking too." He touched his own chest. "And something inside you has been calling for your attention." He looked at the scholar. "But you cannot hear any of it because your mind does not allow space." Kiyoshi felt something inside him loosen. A realization forming not as a thought, but as a feeling. "Silence," Joran said, "is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of you trying to fill the moment." The scholar sat down on the smooth stone beside him. His shoulders softened. His breath slowed. His mind grew quiet enough for him to hear something subtle. The low hum of the wind moving through distant trees. Joran sat beside him. "For years," he said, "you have studied Zen through words. But Zen cannot be understood with words alone. It must be tasted, and silence is the cup that holds that taste." Kiyoshi nodded slowly. "I don't know how to be silent," he whispered. Joran placed a hand over his heart. "This," he said, "already knows silence. It is the mind that needs to learn to step aside." They sat together for a long time, saying nothing. And yet in that silence more was taught than any scroll could contain. Tonight as you rest, notice the sounds around you. Not with judgment, not with commentary, not with analysis. Just notice. Maybe there is a faint hum in the distance. Maybe a soft rustle of fabric, maybe the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Let each sound come to you without naming it. Let it pass without chasing it. Let it fade without holding it. Silence is not something you force. It is something you fall into when the mind stops insisting on filling the moment. Even now, beneath your thoughts, beneath your concerns, beneath your plans, there is a quiet presence, a silence that has been waiting for you. You do not need to create it. You only need to notice it. Let your thoughts soften. Let your mind settle. Let the moment speak. In this silence, you will find something you may have forgotten. Yourself, unburdened and whole. Enough exactly as you are. Not because the day had gone as planned. It hadn't. He smiled because he had finally understood something Cheyenne had been teaching him for years. Life cannot be perfect, but it can be met with grace. When you accept what has already happened, the moment opens again. You see options you didn't see before. You act from clarity rather than fear. And the world feels softer. Tonight, as you rest, ask yourself gently, what water has spilled in your own life? What bridge has washed away? What moment refuses to match your expectations? Take a slow breath. You do not need to fix anything in this moment. You do not need to carry regret or resistance. Just accept that the water spilled. Accept that the bridge is gone. Accept that life changed direction when you least expected it. From this acceptance, a quieter path reveals itself. A path you can walk with lightness and clarity. A path that was waiting for you all along. Part 2. The hermit who spoke only when necessary. High in the northern mountains, where clouds drift low enough to brush the tips of ancient pines, there lived a hermit named Sogen. For most of the year, snow crowned the peaks around his hut. The air tasted of cold stone and evergreen. Silence lived there like an old friend, steady, unbothered, and deep. People in the valley rarely saw Sogen. He descended the mountain only twice each year to trade herbs and roots for simple supplies. Even then, he spoke little. Those who met him described him as a man carved from quiet itself. Some believed he had taken a vow of silence. Others believed he had lost the ability to speak after years alone. The truth was simpler. Sogen spoke only when speech was needed. Most of the time he listened, not just to the forest, not just to the wind, but to the silence beneath all things. One late autumn, a young traveler named Haruto climbed the mountain seeking Sogen's guidance. Haruto was a wandering student of Zen, eager to collect teachings wherever he could. He carried a pack full of books, scrolls, and notebooks, writings he believed contained the answers he was searching for. But his mind was a restless storm. No matter how much he studied, he felt no peace. His thoughts bounced inside him like stones in a jar. His nights were sleepless. His days were spent searching for something he could not name. After weeks of travel, he reached the hermit's clearing just as dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Sogen was sitting outside his hut repairing a pair of straw sandals. He looked up as Haruto entered the clearing. The traveler bowed deeply. "Master Sogen, please teach me. I have traveled far to learn from you." Sogen nodded once, a gesture so small it was almost part of the stillness around him. Haruto waited for the hermit to speak. Several seconds passed, then half a minute, then a full minute. The silence felt heavy, unfamiliar, almost unsettling. Finally, Haruto said, "Master Bhikkhu, may I ask a question?" Sogen nodded again. Haruto swallowed. "How do I quiet my mind? It never stops. I read teachings, I meditate, I chant, but still my thoughts rise like a storm." Sogen looked at him steadily. He tapped the ground beside him, inviting Haruto to sit. The traveler sat, straightening his posture, preparing himself for a lesson. But Sogen said nothing. Instead, he pointed toward the forest. Wind moved through the trees with a sound like soft breathing. The last birds of the day called out. The mountain air carried a cold hush. Haruto waited. His mind filled the empty space with questions, doubts, and nervous thoughts. Finally, he blurted out, "Master, are you going to answer me?" Sogen looked at him calmly and shook his head. Haruto felt confusion rising. "But why not?" The hermit stood, motioning for Haruto to follow. They walked along a narrow trail through the woods until they reached a small pond tucked between moss-covered stones. The surface of the water reflected the fading light of the sky. Sogen pointed to the pond. Haruto stared at it, unsure what the hermit wanted. Then Sogen picked up a stone and dropped it into the water. Ripples spread. Circles widened outward. The reflection broke into 1,000 shifting shapes. Sogen spoke for the first time, his voice deep and soft. "This is your mind." Haruto watched the ripples distort the sky. Sogen added, "Always moving, always reacting, always disturbed." He dropped another stone. The ripples collided, making the disturbance worse. Haruto sighed. "Yes, that is exactly how it feels." Sogen looked at him. Then without a word, he sat down beside the pond. Haruto joined him. The surface continued rippling. The sky remained broken into trembling fragments. But after a minute, the movement softened, then slowed, then gradually returned to stillness. The water became a mirror again. Sogen asked quietly, Did the pond force itself to be still? Haruto shook his head. No. Did it struggle to stop the ripples? No. Did it fight the disturbance? Again, Haruto said no. It just settled. Sogen nodded. His silence returned, but this time it felt like a welcome companion. Haruto looked at the pond, then at the quiet hermit beside him. Master, he whispered, I think I understand. Sogen raised an eyebrow, inviting him to continue. My mind doesn't become still by force, Haruto said. It becomes still when I stop disturbing it. Sogen smiled gently. A small, quiet smile that made Haruto feel like the mountain itself had nodded in approval. They sat together as dusk darkened into night. The pond remained still, reflecting stars as they emerged one by one. Finally, Haruto asked softly, Master, how do I stop disturbing my mind? Sogen picked up another stone. He held it in his palm. Then he placed it gently on the ground. No splash, no ripple, just presence. Then he spoke 4 words. Stop throwing stones. Haruto felt those words sink into him. He thought of all the stones he threw at his own mind every day. The stone of judgment, the stone of regret, the stone of fear, the stone of comparison, the stone of expectation. Each one disturbed him. Each one clouded the clarity he longed for. Tears filled his eyes. Master, he whispered, I never realized how much noise I create inside myself. Sogen nodded. Then he walked back toward the hut, leaving Haruto to sit alone with the pond and the stars. The next morning, Haruto woke early. He stepped quietly outside and found Sogen already seated, boiling water over a small fire. The hermit poured tea into 2 cups, handed one to Haruto, and gestured for him to sit. The forest was still half asleep. A faint mist drifted between the trees. Birdsong had not yet fully begun. Haruto took a sip. The tea was simple, warm, earthy. He waited for Sogen to speak, but the hermit remained silent. And for the first time, Haruto did not feel anxious in the quiet. He felt held by it. He listened to the crackle of the fire. He listened to the soft breaths of the morning forest. He listened to the subtle hum of his own body. No words were needed. Silence, he realized, was not a lack, it was a presence. A vast open space where life could be felt directly. Finally, Sogen spoke. The world is always speaking. You do not need more words, you need more listening. He placed his cup down. When you listen without wanting, without judging, without grasping, you return to the silence that has been waiting inside you. Haruto bowed deeply. In that moment, he understood that the greatest teaching he received on the mountain was not a sentence, nor a philosophy, nor a meditation technique. It was the silence itself, a silence that was not empty but full of understanding. A silence that existed beneath his thoughts the same way the calm pond existed beneath its ripples. A silence that would follow him long after he descended the mountain. Tonight, as you rest, let yourself fall gently into that same silence. Not by force, not by trying to empty your mind, not by pushing thoughts away, just by noticing the quiet that already exists beneath everything. The silence beneath the breath. The silence beneath the heartbeat, the silence beneath every drifting thought. Let the noise settle on its own. Let the mind become still without being pushed. The silence is already here. It has always been here. It is waiting for you to stop throwing stones. And when you do, you will feel a peace that does not fade. A peace born not from the world outside, but from the quiet truth inside you. Enough, exactly as you are. Part 3. The tea woman who discovered the quiet between moments. There is a silence so subtle, so delicate, that most of us walk past it every day without realizing it is there. It hides not in empty rooms or in the hush of the night, but in the small spaces between one movement and the next, between one breath and the next, between one thought and the next. To meet this silence, you do not need to escape your life. You only need to notice what has always been present beneath it. Let me take you to a quiet village at the edge of a forest, where a woman named Hana practiced the tea ceremony in a way no one else did. Hana had learned tea from many teachers, the kind of teachers who demanded precision. Precise fold of the cloth, precise angle of the ladle, precise timing of each gesture. She practiced until her hands memorized every movement. Her body became a vessel for tradition. Her posture was perfect, her form flawless. But inside, she felt nothing but strain. When guests praised her skill, she bowed politely, yet her heart remained restless. One winter, an elderly traveler passed through the village. He was frail, moving slowly with the help of a wooden staff polished by time and use. His presence, however, carried a quiet depth, like an ancient pond, still and clear. He attended one of Hana's tea gatherings. She performed each movement perfectly. She folded the silk cloth with practiced elegance. She lifted the ladle the way her teachers had taught her, smooth, graceful, controlled. But as she worked, the old traveler watched not her movements, but the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her breath, the way her eyes flicked nervously from utensil to utensil. When the ceremony ended, the guests complimented her, and Hana accepted the praise with a polite smile. Only the old traveler remained quiet. As he prepared to leave, he bowed slightly and said, "Your tea is flawless, but your silence is loud." Hana froze. "My silence?" He nodded. "There is noise inside you. Noise no one else can hear, but I can feel it in the way you move." Her face warmed with embarrassment. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Come to the forest tomorrow," he replied, "at dawn." The next morning, Hana followed a narrow path through the woods until she reached a small clearing where the traveler sat beside a stream. He gestured for her to join him. She knelt on the cold earth. "Listen," he said. She closed her eyes and listened. "I hear the stream," she said. He shook his head. "Listen deeper." She tried again. "I hear the wind." Deeper. Silence stretched between them. A faint worry rose inside her. The same worry she felt during tea ceremonies when her movements were not perfect. "I'm failing," she whispered. The old man smiled gently. "Even now," he said, "you fill the moment with judgment. You cannot hear silence because you are too busy trying to be right." He picked up a fallen leaf and placed it gently on the surface of the stream. The leaf drifted slowly, carried by the gentle current. "Silence is not something you search for," he said. "It is something you stop disturbing." He invited her to follow him deeper into the forest until they reached a patch of snow untouched by footprints. "Make a cup of tea here," he said. Hana blinked. "Here, without tools?" "Yes, use what is around you. Let the moment guide you." She hesitated. She felt exposed, unprepared. Her hands trembled slightly, but she knelt and began. She scooped snow into a small pot he carried. He lit a tiny flame. The snow melted slowly into water. Hana reached for a ladle that wasn't there, then stopped herself. A small laugh escaped her lips. She poured the water using a hollow piece of bamboo the old man handed her. Her movements were clumsy, imperfect, uneven. But something unexpected happened. The forest did not judge her. The snow did not criticize her form. The sunrise did not care about her posture. The silence around her held everything without resistance. And it was in that silence that she felt something loosen inside her. A tight knot she had carried for years. When she offered the old man the simple cup of tea, he took a sip and closed his eyes. "And this," he said, "is the most peaceful tea you have ever made." Hana felt a warmth rise in her chest, not pride, but relief. "Why?" she asked softly. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Because," he said, "you made it from silence." She frowned. "I don't understand." "Before," he explained, your movements came from fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, fear of breaking tradition." He touched his chest. "That fear made noise in your mind, noise that filled the space where silence should be." He gestured to the forest. "But here you allowed yourself to be present. You stopped trying to be perfect. You stopped trying to impress. You stopped trying to avoid errors." He tapped the earth lightly, and in the space where trying stopped, silence appeared. Hana lowered her gaze. She realized the truth. She had mastered technique, but not presence. She had learned form, but not stillness. The old man stood slowly, leaning on his staff. "When you return to your tea house," he said, "leave room between your movements. Let silence breathe through your hands. Allow space for what you cannot control." He began walking back toward the village. Hana followed, feeling lighter than she had in years. When she resumed her tea ceremonies, her guests noticed something different. Her movements were slower, not heavy but easeful. There was space between each gesture, like the pause between musical notes that makes the melody come alive. She no longer rushed to fill silence with chatter. She no longer forced elegance. She moved the way a tree bends to wind, naturally without effort. Guests felt it immediately. One whispered, "There is something peaceful today, I can't explain it." Another said, "The tea tastes different," as if time slowed inside the bowl. Hannah smiled quietly. She knew nothing had changed about the tea. What had changed was her relationship with silence. She met each moment with openness instead of tension, and silence filled the spaces she used to crowd with worry. Tonight, as you settle deeper into rest, let Hannah's discovery guide you. Look for the quiet between your breaths. That small pause before the inhale begins or before the exhale ends. There is silence there. Look for the quiet between thoughts. The soft, fleeting space where one idea fades and the next has not yet formed. There is silence there. Look for the quiet between movements. When your body shifts slightly, when your eyelids flutter, when your muscles release tension, there is silence there. Silence does not appear when the world stops. It appears when you stop trying to fill every moment. Let there be pauses, let there be gaps. Let silence breathe through you. The quiet you long for is already inside you, waiting in every small space you have overlooked. And when you finally allow yourself to rest in it, you will discover a peace deeper than sound, deeper than thought, deeper than anything you can name. A peace made not of emptiness, but of presence. A peace made of you. Enough, exactly as you are. Chapter 5. The Art of Letting Go, How Release Becomes the Beginning of Peace. Part 1. The Painter Who Clung to His Masterpiece. There are many ways to hold on. We hold on to memories. We hold on to expectations. We hold on to the person we once were or the person we wish we could be. We hold on to fear, to regret, to old stories that have long outlived their purpose. Most of the suffering we carry does not come from life itself. It comes from our grip, the tightness of a mind that refuses to let go. Tonight, let me share the story of a painter who discovered what letting go truly means. In a small coastal town where fishing boats slept on the waves and the air carried the smell of salt and drying nets, there lived a painter named Naoto. Naoto's paintings were admired throughout the region. He painted scenes of the sea, angry, gentle, shimmering deep, and people said he captured not just the water but the spirit living beneath it. But his reputation had grown so quickly that Naoto felt pressure every time he lifted a brush. He feared disappointing those who praised him. He feared mistakes. He feared imperfection. And then, one summer morning, he began working on what he believed would be his greatest masterpiece. He spent weeks painting a vast canvas filled with stormy seas, waves towering like mountains, spray exploding into white clouds, light cutting through the chaos like a single blade. Every stroke felt alive, but when the painting was almost finished, something inside Naoto changed. The more he stared at his work, the more terrified he became of losing it. Terrified of ruining it, terrified someone else would not understand it, terrified it was not good enough. He stopped painting. He stopped sleeping. He guarded the canvas day and night as if it were a fragile treasure. He refused to let anyone see it. He covered it with cloth. He locked the door to his studio. The masterpiece he loved slowly became a prison. One morning, an elderly monk named Soseki visited the town. People said he wandered from village to village carrying nothing but a staff and a small bowl. His presence was calm, like the ocean on a windless day. He heard whispers about Naoto's hidden masterpiece and decided to visit him. Naoto reluctantly opened the door to the old monk. Soseki bowed politely. "I have heard you created something extraordinary," he said. "May I see it?" Naoto stiffened. "No, it isn't ready. It isn't perfect. It cannot be touched." He stood defensively in front of the covered canvas. Soseki looked around the studio, the scattered brushes, the locked windows, the tense shoulders of the painter. "You look tired," the monk said softly. "You look as if you are carrying a heavy burden." Naoto snapped back. "This painting is everything. I cannot risk ruining it." Soseki stepped closer. "You treat it as if it were already ruined." Naoto froze. Those simple words pierced him. "What do you mean?" he asked. The old monk walked to the covered canvas and gently rested a hand on the cloth. "Anything you cling to this tightly stops being alive," he said. "You have not painted for weeks, you have not slept, you do not breathe. This painting owns you." Naoto felt anger rise. "This is my greatest work, I must protect it." Soseki shook his head. "Protect it from what? From change, from imperfection, from being seen, from being finished?" He stepped back and looked Naoto in the eyes. "Or are you protecting yourself from the fear that it might not be what you hoped it would be?" Naoto lowered his gaze. His hands trembled. The monk continued. "You believe letting go means losing, but sometimes letting go is the only way for something to become complete." He walked to the window and opened it. Morning air rushed in, fresh, cool, honest. "Show it to me," he said. "Let the world see it. Let the painting breathe." Naoto's heart pounded. His mind raced. If he unveiled the canvas, someone might criticize it. Someone might misunderstand it. Someone might not like it. He felt as if his entire worth hung behind that cloth. But something in Soseki's presence softened him. The monk did not push. He simply stood there, open, steady, silent. Naoto took a slow breath and reached for the edge of the cloth. His fingers shook. He pulled it back. Light spilled onto the painting. For the first time in weeks, he looked at it without fear. Soseki stepped closer, studied the canvas quietly, and smiled. "It is beautiful," he said, "and it is unfinished." Naoto blinked. "I know," he whispered. I was afraid to continue." Soseki nodded. "And that fear trapped you. Letting go will free you." Naoto looked at the painting again. He noticed small areas he had abandoned. He noticed the movement in the waves calling for completion. He noticed the space in the sky waiting for light. Slowly, something shifted. He picked up a brush. His hand hovered over the canvas. He hesitated for one last moment, the grip of fear still heavy. Then he exhaled and let go of the need to be perfect. His brush touched the canvas. A stroke, then another, and another. His body relaxed. The painting breathed again. It grew, changed, lived. Hours passed. Soseki watched from the corner, his eyes warm, his presence like steady water. When Naoto finally stepped back, the masterpiece was done. Not perfect, but alive. The monk stood and bowed. "You see," he said, "letting go does not mean losing what you love." He touched Naoto's heart. "It means freeing your hands so you can create again." Naoto felt tears in his eyes. "Master, how do I keep from holding on too tightly again?" Soseki smiled. "By remembering that everything in this world is meant to move. Paintings, people, feelings, moments." He walked toward the door. "When you cling, you stop the movement. When you let go, you join it." As the monk left the studio, Naoto looked at his finished painting. For the first time, he felt no fear, only gratitude. He knew then that the masterpiece was never the goal. The freedom to create was the true gift. Tonight, as you rest, think about what you hold on to. Maybe it is a regret that whispers through your mind at night. Maybe it is a dream from long ago that no longer fits your life. Maybe it is anger, hurt, fear, or a picture of yourself you believe you must protect. Let those things soften, not by force, but by noticing your grip. Loosen your hold just a little. Let breath move, let body soften, let mind release its fist. You are not losing anything. You are making space for peace, for clarity, for the next chapter of your life to unfold. Let go, just enough, just for tonight, and feel how light you become. Part 2. The Fisherman Who Carried a Broken Net. Long before dawn, when the sea was still dark and the horizon only a faint line between night and morning, a fisherman named Riku pushed his small wooden boat into the water. Riku had fished these shores since he was a child. He knew the tides, the winds, the moods of the ocean. He knew which currents carried abundance and which fooled sailors with empty promise. He knew the weight of a full net and the weight of an empty one. But there was one thing he could not escape: the memory of a terrible storm that had struck 2 months earlier. That night, giant waves rose like living mountains. Winds screamed across the water. Lightning cracked open the sky. Riku's boat nearly capsized. He survived only because another fisherman pulled him to safety. But his net, the net his father had given him, was torn to pieces. Though he repaired it as best he could, it never returned to what it once was. The threads hung unevenly. The knots loosened too easily. Fish slipped through gaps he could not see. Yet Riku refused to let it go. "It's my father's net," he said each time someone suggested he replace it. He used this net his whole life. I must keep using it no matter what. And so he carried the broken net with him every morning before sunrise and every evening after sunset, even as the catch grew smaller and his frustration grew heavier. One day, as Riku mended the net for the 1,000th time, an elderly monk approached the shore. He was on a pilgrimage, stopping at villages along the coast to share wisdom where it was welcomed. He watched Riku work in silence for a long moment. Finally, he asked, "What are you repairing?" Riku looked up. "My father's net. It was damaged during a storm." The monk knelt beside him, studying the tangled threads. "It looks very old," the monk said softly. Riku nodded. "It is. I cannot replace it. My father wove it himself." "And does it still serve you?" the monk asked. Riku hesitated. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to say it worked perfectly. He wanted to defend it with pride. But he couldn't. Instead, he said quietly, "It used to." The monk smiled with understanding. "And now?" Riku sighed. "Now. It leaks. It tears. It holds less and less each week." He pulled the net into his lap as if protecting something fragile. "But I can't let it go." The monk nodded. "I see." He picked up one of the frayed threads and let it fall through his fingers. "Oh, sometimes," he said, "we cling to something not because it is useful, but because we fear what it means to release it." Riku felt the truth of those words land inside him like a stone dropped into still water. The monk continued, "This net connected you to your father. It holds memories, it holds history, it holds meaning." Riku swallowed hard. "Yes, but it no longer holds fish." Riku looked away, unable to meet the monk's eyes. The monk placed a gentle hand on the fisherman's shoulder. "You honor your father not by carrying his broken net," he said, "but by carrying the strength he gave you." Riku felt a tightness in his chest, a knot he had ignored for months. "My father taught me to work hard," he whispered, "to be grateful, to respect the sea, to endure." The monk nodded. "And those teachings are not in the net, they are in you." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the ocean. Waves lapped softly at the shore. Riku stared at the torn edges of the net. It looked tired. It looked like something that had fulfilled its purpose long ago. "Master," he said quietly, "how do I let go of something so full of memory?" The monk smiled. "By realizing that memory does not live inside the object. It lives inside the heart." He looked at the net. "This net was strong once. It helped you. It carried your family, but if you carry it now, it pulls you down. It keeps your hands full when they could be open." Riku closed his eyes. He could see his father's hands, rough, steady, loving, teaching him how to tie the knots, how to cast the net, how to trust the sea. Those memories were alive. They had never left him. Slowly, Riku opened his eyes and looked at the net again. It no longer felt like a sacred object. It felt like a weight he had been afraid to release because he feared losing something more important. The monk stood and walked toward the water's edge. "Come," he said. Riku followed. The monk held out the net. "Let it return to the sea," he said. "Let it go back to the place it came from." Riku trembled. "I'm scared," he whispered. The monk nodded. "Of course, letting go is always frightening, because we forget that the heart is bigger than what it releases." He offered the net again. Riku looked at it for the last time. Then he stepped into the shallow water. He held the net against his chest, whispered a quiet thank you, and lowered it into the sea. The waves took it gently, pulling it away inch by inch until it drifted beneath the surface and disappeared. Riku stood there for a long moment, feeling a strange mixture of grief and relief. The monk placed a hand on his back. "It is gone," Riku whispered. "No," the monk replied softly. "It has changed form." Riku wiped his eyes. "What do I do now?" "Now," the monk said, "you fish with empty hands. Empty hands are open to the future." The next morning, Riku went to the boat with a new net woven by his own hands. He felt nervous, like a beginner again. But as he cast the net into the early morning light, something shifted inside him. The weight he had carried for months was gone. His heart felt lighter, his breath deeper, his movements freer. The new net sank into the water and returned heavy with fish. Riku smiled, not because of the catch, but because he had learned something deeper. Letting go had not taken anything from him. It had given something back, his ability to move forward. Tonight, as you rest, consider the broken nets you carry, a regret from the past, a relationship you've outgrown, an identity that no longer fits, a dream you've kept alive long after its season ended. You have held these things close, perhaps out of love, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of habit. But holding too tightly keeps your hands closed, and closed hands cannot receive anything new. Take a slow breath. You do not need to throw anything away tonight. You do not need to force yourself to let go. Just notice the weight you carry. Notice the grip. Notice the tiredness in your hands from holding something too long, and gently soften your grip. For a moment, for a breath, for tonight. Let the sea inside you carry what no longer serves, and feel how your heart begins to open again. Part 3. The old garden that bloomed only after release. There are many ways to let go. Some are loud, a sudden decision, a sharp goodbye, a dramatic break from the past. But others are quiet, so quiet that no one else notices. A soft shift, a loosening, a gentle surrender. Sometimes letting go does not feel like losing. Sometimes it feels like breathing again. Let me take you to a small town on the outskirts of a forest, where an old gardener named Masaru learned the kind of letting go that happens slowly, tenderly, like leaves falling in autumn. Masaru had tended his garden for over 40 years. It sat behind his wooden home, a patch of earth filled with winding paths, old stones and flowers that had bloomed faithfully season after season. He loved that garden more than anything else. It had been his companion through youth, through marriage, through raising children, and through the quiet years after they left home. But as Masaru grew older, his knees stiffened, his back bent with age, and the tools that were once light in his hands became heavy. Still, he refused to let go. Every morning before the sun rose, he went into the garden. He trimmed, he watered, he pulled weeds even when the pain in his hands made them tremble. His neighbors often told him to rest, but Masaru shook his head. "This garden needs me," he said. "It cannot live without my care." Yet something strange began to happen. The more Masaru tried to control the garden, the less it flourished. The soil hardened. Certain flowers withered, weeds took root in unexpected places, once vibrant colors dulled. Masaru blamed himself. "I'm failing," he whispered. "I'm not strong enough anymore." One spring morning, as he struggled to prune a tall rose bush, his eldest son, Hiro, visited. He watched his father working, swaying slightly from fatigue, breathing hard. "Father," Hiro said gently, "you are hurting yourself." Masaru wiped sweat from his brow. "This garden is my life. If I don't pour my strength into it, it will fade." Hiro shook his head. "No, it is fading because you are holding it too tightly." Masaru stiffened. Hiro continued softly. "You shaped it with love for 40 years, but now you fight it. You try to force it into what it used to be instead of letting it become what it is becoming." Masaru looked away. He did not want to hear these words, but deep inside he knew they were true. That evening, after Hiro left, Masaru walked the garden path slowly. The lantern light flickered. The wind carried a cool spring scent. He paused at a patch of earth where peonies once bloomed brilliantly each year, but last spring they had barely opened. "This soil isn't right," he muttered. "I must fix it." He knelt down, but pain shot through his back. Exhausted, he leaned against a stone and closed his eyes. He felt the earth beneath him, steady, unmoving, holding him without question. And in that stillness he remembered something. When he first planted the garden as a young man, he did not control it. He did not cling to it. He let it grow freely. He paid attention, but he did not force. He worked with the garden, not against it. But somewhere along the years he had become afraid. Afraid of losing it, afraid of change, afraid of being useless. He realized the truth. His fear was strangling the very thing he loved. He opened his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he did not see the garden as something fragile that required his constant control. He saw it as a living thing with its own rhythm. A rhythm he needed to respect, not dominate. "I have been holding too tightly," he whispered. The The moon hung above him, silent but knowing. The next morning, Masaru did something he had never done before. He left some tasks undone. He let the roses grow without perfect symmetry. He allowed certain wildflowers to scatter where they wished. He stopped pulling every weed, choosing instead to learn what wanted to grow on its own. He rested more, he watched more, he trusted more. Day by day, something miraculous happened. The soil softened. New sprouts appeared in places he would never have chosen. Delicate white blossoms between cracks in the path, purple flowers climbing an old fence, yellow buds circling the stones as if guiding a new shape. Birds returned in pairs. Bees buzzed joyfully. The garden, once stiff from Masaru's tight control, began to breathe again. One morning, Masaru stood beneath his favorite persimmon tree and felt tears fill his eyes. The garden was changing, not becoming worse, becoming fuller, wilder, truer. It was alive, and so was he. He felt lighter, as if he had released something that had been weighing on him for years. He understood now. Letting go did not mean abandoning the garden. It meant trusting it. It meant working with it instead of trying to control every inch. It meant caring without clinging. That evening, Hiro visited again. He stopped at the gate, gazing at the garden in surprise. "Father," he said softly, "it's more beautiful than it's been in years." Masaru smiled. "It is," he replied, "and I have done less than ever." Hiro approached him with warmth in his eyes. "What changed?" Masaru placed a hand on his chest. "I did," he said. "I let go of trying to force the past to stay alive. I let the garden grow into something new, and in doing so, I began to grow too." Hiro embraced him. "Father," he whispered, "and I'm proud of you." Masaru looked at the soft colors of dusk spreading across the garden. "I thought letting go would make everything fall apart," he said. "Instead, it made everything bloom. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, think of the gardens in your own life. The things you have tended for years, the things you have cared about deeply. Perhaps a dream that no longer fits. Perhaps a version of yourself you no longer are. Perhaps a relationship you have tried to shape into something it cannot become. Maybe the soil has changed. Maybe the season has shifted. Maybe the garden is asking to grow in a new direction. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop holding so tightly that nothing can breathe. Take a slow breath. Feel your hands soften. Feel your chest loosen. Feel your thoughts drift like petals on water. You do not need to force anything tonight. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to control anything. Just let the garden inside your heart become what it is becoming. Let life grow without being trapped in yesterday's shape. Let go, not as a loss, but as a way of opening. And watch in time how something beautiful begins to bloom. Enough, exactly as it is. Chapter 6. The peace of being present, returning to the only moment that truly exists. Part 1. The young monk who walked too fast. There is a unique tension that lives inside many of us. The tension of being here yet always trying to be somewhere else. The tension of living this moment while thinking about the next. The tension of walking through life with our bodies in one place and our minds running far ahead. Tonight, let me take you into the story of a young monk who discovered peace not through effort, but through simply learning how to walk. Ryota was the youngest monk at Windfall Temple, a place nestled between mountains and rivers where the roofs curved gracefully into the sky and the smell of cedar drifted through the air. He had arrived only 2 months earlier, eager, hopeful, full of dreams about enlightenment and the kind of peace he had read about in books. But Ryota's enthusiasm came with a constant sense of urgency. When he swept the courtyard, he rushed to finish so he could meditate sooner. When he meditated, he rushed through the stillness so he could hurry to the next task. When he ate, his mind was already thinking about chores. When he washed bowls, his mind was thinking about scripture. When he walked from one hall to another, his feet moved quickly as if speed could carry him closer to spiritual growth. In truth, Ryota was rarely here. He was always ahead of himself, chasing a moment that never arrived. The head monk, Master Ogi, watched him quietly. He saw the tension in the boy's steps. He saw the impatience in his breath. He saw the way Ryota's eyes rarely settling on the world in front of him. One morning, as Ryota hurried across the courtyard with a bucket of water, Master Ogi called out, "Ryota." The young monk stopped abruptly, almost spilling the water. "Yes, master." "Follow me." Ryota set the bucket down and bowed. Then he hurried after the old monk, too quickly as usual. Master Ogi walked very slowly. His feet touched the ground with gentle intention. His breath was calm, his pace steady. Ryota walked beside him, holding his energy like a horse straining against a rope. After a minute of silence, Ryota said, "Master, may I ask where we are going?" Ogi replied, "We are already going." Ryota blinked. He didn't understand. Master Ogi continued walking, step by step, quiet, unhurried, completely present. Ryota tried to match his pace, but after a few steps, he found himself taking small, impatient glances toward the path ahead. Master Ogi noticed. "Ryota," he said, "why are you rushing?" "I'm not rushing, master," Ryota replied. "I'm simply walking." The old monk shook his head. "No, you are walking quickly in order to be somewhere you are not yet. You are not truly here." Ryota lowered his gaze. He didn't know how to respond. They reached a small stone bench by the garden, and Master Ogi sat down. "Ryota," he said, "tell me why you came to this temple." Ryota thought for a moment. "I want to find peace." Ogi nodded. "And where do you believe peace lives?" Ryota hesitated. "In meditation, in wisdom, in enlightenment, in understanding the teachings." Master Ogi smiled. "A peace lives only in the present moment. Not in the next breath, not in the next hour, not in the next chapter of your training. Only here." He tapped the bench gently. "This moment is the doorway, and yet you are always running past it." Ryota looked down, embarrassed. "I don't know how to slow down," he admitted. Ogi stood and motioned to the path. "Then let us practice." They walked again. But this time the master placed a hand on Ryota's shoulder and gently slowed him. "You feel your feet touch the ground," Ogi said. "Not lightly, not quickly, no, fully." Ryota tried. His first steps were awkward. He felt strangely exposed, as if the whole world could see his discomfort. "Now feel your breath," Ogi continued. "Not forced, not controlled, just noticed." Ryota inhaled. He exhaled. He noticed tension loosening in his stomach. Master Ogi walked with him step by step. "Look around you," the master said. "Not ahead, right here. See the moss on the stones, hear the breeze in the bamboo, smell the morning air." Ryota lifted his head. For the first time in weeks, he saw the courtyard clearly. Not as a place he had to cross quickly, but as a place alive with detail, with sound, with presence. His shoulders softened, his breath deepened, his steps no longer carried urgency. Master Ogi spoke gently. "Ryota, you believe peace is something to achieve, but peace is something to notice." He placed his palm against his chest. "When you rush, you abandon yourself. When you are present, you return home." Ryota felt something inside him settling, a soft warmth spreading through his chest. "Try walking again," Ogi said. Ryota walked, slow, unhurried, present. He felt the earth beneath him instead of thinking about the destination ahead. He felt the breath in him instead of forcing it to be calm. He felt the moment instead of chasing the next one. At one point, Ryota stopped. He turned to the master, eyes soft. "Master," he whispered, "the courtyard feels different." Ogi smiled. "No, you feel different. The courtyard has always been like this." Ryota looked around. The bamboo swaying, the cicadas singing, the sun warming the path. Had it always been this beautiful? He felt a tightness in his throat, not sadness, but recognition. "How many moments have I missed?" he asked quietly. "Many," the master replied, "and they will keep passing without you if you continue running toward the future." He placed a gentle hand on Ryota's back. "But peace will always be here the moment you return." The young monk felt a deep quiet settle within him. Not the forced quiet of discipline, but a natural quiet born from being present. For the first time, he understood a simple truth. He had not come to the temple to chase enlightenment. He had come to remember this moment, the only moment where peace can truly be found. Tonight, as you rest, return to your own body the way Ryota returned to the courtyard. Feel the weight of your body where it touches the bed or chair. Feel the breath flowing in and out without needing to be controlled. Feel the air around you. Feel the softness of this moment. You don't need to be anywhere else. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to prepare for the next chapter. Just be here, in this breath, in this softness, in this quiet. The future will come on its own. The past is already finished. But this moment, this single moment is yours. You can rest inside it fully, completely, without effort. You can return home to yourself with nothing more than a single breath. Enough, exactly as you are. Chapter 6, Part 2. The Potter Who Found Stillness in the Turning Wheel. There is a rhythm to life that we often forget. A rhythm that does not rush, does not cling, does not force. It is the rhythm of being present, fully, openly, gently. But for many of us, the rhythm becomes lost beneath the noise of our minds. We move quickly, push through moments, and overlook the quiet depth hidden inside the simplest actions. Tonight, let me tell you the story of a potter who rediscovered this rhythm and found peace in the one place he least expected it. Tomo was the most respected potter in his village. He created bowls so smooth they felt like river stones in the hand, and vases so perfectly shaped they seemed to breathe with a life of their own. People traveled great distances to buy his work. Yet despite the beauty of what he crafted, Tomo himself felt restless. When he worked the clay, his thoughts raced. When he spun the wheel, his heartbeat quickened. When he shaped the rim of a bowl, he worried it wouldn't be perfect. His hands trembled at times, not from age, but from the pressure he placed upon himself. He wanted each piece to be flawless, and the desire for perfection kept him from feeling any joy in the craft he once loved. One afternoon, after a long morning of frustration, Tomo slammed a half-formed vase onto the table. Clay splattered onto the floor. "I can't do this anymore," he muttered. At that moment, an elderly woman entered his workshop. She was known throughout the region as a wandering healer, not of the body but of the spirit. Her name was Aya. She looked at the broken clay, then at Tomo's shaking hands. "Your wheel is turning," she said, "but you are not." Tomo frowned. "What does that mean?" Aya walked to the potter's wheel and touched it gently. It was still spinning from his last attempt. "You move like this wheel," she said, "always turning, always pushing, always trying to be ahead of yourself." Tomo sighed in frustration. "I have orders to fill. People expect excellence. I can't slow down." Aya studied him with kind eyes. "Then show me," she said. "Make something now." Tomo hesitated. Part of him wanted to refuse, but something about her presence softened his resistance. He sat at the wheel. He placed a lump of clay in the center. His hands shook slightly as he touched it. Aya sat beside him. "Begin," she said. He pressed the pedal. The wheel spun. He shaped the clay. But his mind raced with self-criticism. "The shape is wrong. This won't be good enough. I'm wasting her time." The vase collapsed in his hands. Tomo cursed under his breath. Aya said nothing. Finally, Tomo asked sharply, "Well, what do you think?" She looked at him calmly. "I think you are not here." Tomo blinked. "What? Of course I'm here." "No," she said, "you are with your fears, with your expectations, with the voices of people who are not in this room." She leaned closer. "And while you chase them, the clay goes unshaped." Her words settled heavily on him. "Again," she said. Tomo took a deep breath, placed a new lump of clay onto the wheel, and started spinning. The wheel turned. The clay rose. His fingers guided it upward, but once again his mind drifted. "What if this one collapses? What if I've lost my skill?" The shape trembled, it wavered, it leaned. Aya touched Tomo's arm lightly. "Stop." He let the wheel slow to a halt. She picked up the clay and held it between her palms. "Tomo," she said softly, "you are shaping the clay with frightened hands. The clay listens to your mind more than your fingers." Tomo felt his chest tighten as if someone had spoken a truth he had hidden from himself. Aya placed the clay back on the wheel. "This time," she said, "before you touch it, be here." Tomo frowned. "I am here." She shook her head gently. "Not with your body, with your awareness." She placed her hands on his for a moment, guiding them to rest on his lap. "And feel your breath," she said. "Not as something to control, just as something that happens." Tomo inhaled, exhaled. He noticed how tight his shoulders were. He noticed the heaviness in his chest. He noticed the constant tension he had grown so used to that it felt normal. "Now," she said, "feel the ground beneath your feet." Tomo pressed his feet gently into the floor. The sensation grounded him. "Now feel your hands," she whispered, "empty, ready, unburdened." For the first time in a long while, his fingers softened. Aya smiled. Good," she said, "but now begin." Tomo placed his hands on the clay. He pressed the pedal. The wheel began to spin, slowly at first, then steadily. He didn't rush. He didn't force. He didn't think about the finished vase. He felt the clay moving under his palms. He felt the coolness of it, the softness, the way it responded to even the smallest shift in pressure. Aya spoke gently. "Do you feel the rhythm?" Tomo nodded. "It's gentle," he said, "almost like breathing." "That," Aya said, "is presence." The vase began taking shape, not perfect, not symmetrical, but alive. Tomo watched it rise as if seeing clay for the first time. Aya leaned closer. "When you work from presence," she said, "your hands move with the world, not against it." She placed her hand on her heart. "And your mind becomes quiet because it finally has nowhere else to go." Tomo felt something open inside of him, a spaciousness that felt like truth. They worked together in silence, no rushing, no forcing, no chasing perfection. When the vase was complete, Tomo lifted his hands gently away from it. He stared at the shape. Simple, uneven, yet somehow beautiful. "It's not perfect," he said. Aya smiled warmly. "Nothing alive is perfect, and nothing perfect is alive." Tomo laughed softly, a sound he had not made in months. "What did you teach me today, Aya?" he asked. She looked around the workshop. "I taught you how to return to this moment. I taught you how to feel the ground beneath your feet. I taught you how to breathe again." She touched the clay. "And I taught you that peace is not in the finished piece, but in the hands that create it. Hands that are present." Tomo bowed his head. Thank you," he whispered. "I had forgotten how to be here." Aya smiled. "You remembered today, and you can remember again tomorrow. Tonight, as you rest, feel your own breath the way Tomo felt the turning of the wheel. Feel the rhythm of your body, then soft, steady, natural. You do not need to control it. You do not need to correct it. You do not need to rush it. Just notice the quiet hum of the present moment. Notice how your shoulders soften when you stop trying to be somewhere else. Notice the warmth in your chest when you stop chasing the future. Notice the peace that rises when you allow yourself to be here. You are not behind in life. You are not late. You are not missing anything. You are simply arriving in this moment, and this moment is enough. Let your breath guide you. Let your body rest. Let your mind settle like clay finding its form. Peace is not something far away. It is here, in the gentle awareness of this very breath. Enough, exactly as you are. Part 3. The Elder Who Waited for the Present to Arrive. Part 3. The Elder Who Waited for the Present to Arrive. There is a quiet truth hidden beneath the noise of daily life. Most of us are waiting for something. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel calm. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for life to line up with our expectations. We wait for happiness tomorrow while overlooking the peace that is already possible today. Let me take you to a small village near a river bend, where an elderly man named Jinen learned how to stop waiting, and how to live in the one moment that ever truly belonged to him. Jinen had spent most of his life as a carpenter. His hands were strong, his back straight, his mind sharp. He had built houses, boats, bridges, even the large communal hall in the center of the village. People admired his skill and came to him for help whenever something needed repairing. But as the years passed, Jinen's strength faded. His hands stiffened, his steps slowed. The tools he once lifted with ease now felt heavy and unfamiliar. One day, after dropping a wooden beam onto his foot, he finally admitted that his body could no longer do what it had done for decades. Reluctantly, he put away his tools and retired. Without work, Jinen felt lost. He did not know how to fill his days. He wandered through the village with a restlessness that everyone could see but no one knew how to soothe. "I will feel better when my strength returns," he told himself. "I will feel peaceful when I regain my purpose." But weeks passed, then months, and nothing changed. The more he waited for peace, the further it drifted from him. One morning, after another sleepless night, Jinen walked to the riverbank behind the village. He sat on a large stone and stared at the water. He watched it flow, smooth, unhurried, alive. He felt a strange longing, not for the past, but for the kind of simplicity the river seemed to embody. As he sat there, a monk from a traveling temple approached. Her name was Sarah. She wore simple robes and carried a small woven basket filled with herbs. She greeted him with a gentle bow. "May I sit?" she asked. Jinen nodded. Sarah settled on the stone beside him. After a few moments of quiet, she asked, "What brings you here so early?" Jinen sighed. "I don't know what to do with myself anymore. I'm waiting for things to get better, but nothing changes." Sarah observed the river for a moment. "Waiting," she said softly, "is the heaviest burden many people carry." Jinen frowned. "What do you mean?" She picked up a small twig and let it fall into the river. The twig drifted, turning slowly with the current. "The river does not wait to flow," she said. "It does not wait to feel ready. It does not wait for permission. It simply moves with the moment it is given." Jinen watched the twig disappear downstream. "But I can't just move without knowing what to do," he said. Sarah smiled kindly. "That is because you think peace comes from deciding your future. But peace comes only from meeting the present." Jinen rubbed his hands together. "They feel so empty now. Everything I knew how to do is gone." Sarah shook her head gently. "No, your skills built the past, but your presence builds the moment." Jinen looked confused. "I don't understand." The monk stood and motioned for him to follow. "I come," she said. "Let me show you." They walked through the village until they reached a small path leading into the fields. Farmers were tending to their crops. Children were laughing as they chased each other between the rows. Birds circled overhead, calling to the morning light. Sarah stopped near a farmer who struggled to lift a heavy sack of grain. Jinen stepped forward instinctively. "I can help with that," he said. He lifted the sack with both hands, slowly, carefully, and placed it on the farmer's cart. It took effort, more than it would have years ago, but he did it. The farmer bowed deeply. "Thank you, Jinen. I didn't want to trouble you." Jinen felt a warmth spread through his chest, a sense of usefulness, simple and honest. Sarah smiled. "What happened just now?" she asked. "I helped him," Jinen said. "And were you thinking about the past?" she asked, "or the future?" Jinen hesitated. "No," he said, "I wasn't thinking at all. I was simply there." Sarah nodded. "That is presence, and inside presence you found peace for a moment." They walked further, and Jinen helped several more people. A woman carrying water, a boy who dropped a basket of apples, an elder struggling with a stubborn gait. Each action was small, simple, unplanned, and each time he felt the same subtle warmth, a quiet spark of meaning that required no past and no future. When they returned to the river, Sarah sat beside him again. "Do you see now?" she asked. Jinen thought for a moment. "Yes," he said slowly. "I keep waiting for life to feel right again. But peace doesn't come from waiting." He touched his chest. "The peace comes from showing up." Sarah nodded. "Exactly. You don't need the strength you used to have. You only need the presence you already have." Jinen looked out over the water. He felt something settle inside him, a settling that felt like coming home. "I lived so many years thinking the future would give me peace," he said. "But the only peace I felt today came from being present." Sarah placed a hand on the stone beside her. "The present moment is always enough," she said. "When we enter it fully, we stop carrying the weight of time." Jinen closed his eyes. The sound of the river filled the spaces in his mind where worry once sat. He felt lighter, not because his life had changed, but because he had finally arrived in the life he already had. Tonight, as you rest, let Jinen's discovery guide you. Notice this moment, not the next one, not tomorrow, not what happened earlier. Just this breath, just this body, just this stillness. You don't have to wait to feel peaceful. You don't need perfect circumstances. You don't need the future to unfold in a certain way. Peace is not something ahead of you. Peace is not something you must chase. Peace is what appears when you arrive in the moment that is already here. Feel your breath. Feel your weight resting gently. Feel the softness in your chest when you stop running toward tomorrow. This is the only moment that belongs to you. Rest in it, breathe in it, live in it. Enough, exactly as it is. Chapter 7. Returning Home to Awareness. Where the journey ends and where life truly begins. There is a place inside you that has been quietly waiting through every chapter of your life. A place untouched by fear, untouched by regret, untouched by the noise of thought. A space that existed before you learned your name, before you formed opinions, before the world told you who you should be. This place is awareness itself. The simple, open presence that has been watching everything since the moment you were born. Tonight, let me guide you to that place through one final story. A story that gathers the heart of every lesson you have traveled through so far. A story about returning home to the awareness beneath all things. In a quiet valley beside a slow river, there lived a man named H. Gentle, reflective, curious, but also a man who carried a weight in his chest that he could never. People often came to him for help solving their problems, yet he struggled to find peace in his own heart. He tried many practices, he read many teachings. He sat in silence, walked in forests, listened to flowing water. But something still felt unsettled inside him. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the river glowed with fading light, Haru visited an old hermit who lived in a small hut near the edge of the woods. The hermit was known only as Shion. He had lived alone for so many years that the villagers believed he had forgotten how to speak. But those who had met him said he possessed a clarity that felt like standing in clean mountain air. Haru bowed as he approached. "Master Shion," he said softly, "I have come because I do not know who I am anymore." The hermit looked at him with eyes that seemed to see through questions straight into the center where questions dissolve. He gestured for Haru to sit. After a moment of silence, Haru spoke again. "I have tried to find peace," he said. "I have learned to let go. I have learned to accept. I have learned to stop chasing the future and to stop fighting the past. But still, something no matter what, I feel separate from the world, as if there is a wall between me and the life I'm trying to live." Shion listened quietly. When Haru finished, the hermit picked up a small bowl of water and held it between them. "What do you see?" Shion asked. "Water," Haru replied. Shion shook his head gently. "Look deeper." Haru leaned forward. He saw the surface of the water reflecting Shion's face, his own face, the sky behind them. "Now touch the surface lightly," Shion instructed. Haru placed his finger on the water. The reflection rippled, shifting and breaking. "What do you see now?" "The reflection is gone," Haru said. Shion nodded. "That is your mind," he said. "Always moving, always disturbed by the smallest touch. Always filled with images, thoughts, memories, fears, identities. You try to know yourself through the reflection, but the reflection is not stable." He set the bowl down. "If you want to know yourself," the hermit continued, "you must look not at the reflection, but at what holds the reflection." "The bowl?" Haru asked. Shion smiled softly. "No, the water itself." Haru frowned slightly. "I don't understand." Shion lifted the bowl again. "The shape on the surface changes," he said. "It shifts when the wind blows, it bends when a finger touches it. It disappears in darkness. But the water beneath the reflection remains the same." He leaned closer. "You are not the reflection. You are the awareness in which the reflection appears." Something stirred inside Haru, a subtle recognition, like remembering a dream he had forgotten long ago. Still, he said nothing. Shion stood and motioned for him to follow. They walked toward the river. Evening had settled fully now, and the first stars glimmered faintly above the water. The river flowed slowly, carrying leaves, reflections of the sky, and small ripples created by unseen fish. "Sit," Shion said. They sat on the riverbank. "Tell me," Shion asked, "where does the river end?" Haru thought for a moment. "It flows to the sea. And where does the sea end?" "It returns to the sky. And where does the sky end?" Haru looked up. "I don't know." Shion smiled. "That is because it doesn't end." He picked up a smooth stone and dropped it gently into the water. Ripples spread outward, soft circular waves expanding into larger rings until they reached the far banks and dissolved into stillness. "That stone," Shion said, "is every thought you have. A memory, a fear, a story, a label. Each one disturbs the surface and creates the illusion of separation. He looked at Haru, but beneath the surface of the river is a quiet that no stone can touch, a stillness that has no beginning and no end. He placed a hand over Haru's heart. That stillness lives here. Haru felt tears rise unexpectedly. He whispered, "So, I am the river?" Shion shook his head gently. "No, you are the awareness that knows the river." The evening deepened. The stars grew brighter. A cool breeze moved through the trees. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Haru watched the water flow. He watched a leaf drift downstream. He watched the reflection of the sky ripple and reform. Slowly, silently, something began to loosen inside him. Not a concept, not an idea, but a felt understanding. All his life he had tried to improve the reflection, to fix the self-image, to change the thoughts, to rearrange the surface, but he had never looked beneath it. He had never turned toward the awareness that simply watched everything rise and fall. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled. It felt as if he had taken his first full breath in years. "Master," Haru whispered, "I feel open." Shion nodded. "That is because you are meeting yourself for the first time without a story." Haru closed his eyes. He felt the river's movement. He felt the cool air on his skin. He felt the earth beneath him. He felt awareness itself, quiet, steady, unchanging, as the background of every sensation. Nothing to fix, nothing to reach, nothing to escape, nothing to become. Just this moment, just this awareness, just this being. Shion spoke softly, as if echoing Haru's inner realization. You do not need to chase peace. You do not need to heal every thought. You do not need to solve the mind. You only need to remember what you are. He gestured toward the river. Thoughts are the waves. Awareness is the water. He pointed to the stars. Experiences are the clouds. Awareness is the sky. His voice grew even softer. You are the sky. They remained at the river until the moon climbed fully above the horizon. Its silver light shimmered across the water like a path stretching into infinity. Haru felt something he had never felt before, a sense of belonging that did not depend on anything outside him. He bowed deeply. "Thank you, Master." But Shion shook his head. "You are thanking the wrong person," he said gently. "I did nothing. You returned to yourself." He stood slowly. "Our time is done," he said. "Now go home." Haru rose, feeling light, almost weightless. As he walked back toward the village, he noticed everything differently, as if seeing through new eyes. The gravel under his feet, the lanterns glowing softly in windows, the cool night air brushing his skin. Everything felt alive. Everything felt connected. Everything felt simple. He was not separate from the world. He was awareness itself experiencing the world. He returned to his home. He lay down. He rested his hands on his chest and closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he was not waiting to become someone else. He was not searching. He was not resisting. He was not clinging. He was not trapped in stories about himself. He was simply here, present, awake, aware. And in that awareness, he found the peace he had been seeking all along. Tonight, as you rest, let this final truth settle gently in your heart. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not your past. You are not your stories. You are not the ripples on the surface. You are the awareness that watches everything with quiet clarity. You are the open sky, vast, unburdened, untouched by passing clouds. You don't need to become peaceful. You are peace beneath the noise. You don't need to chase presence. You are presence beneath distraction. You don't need to fix yourself. You are whole beneath every emotion. Let the river flow. Let the thoughts move. Let the moments rise and fall. You remain, calm, deep, unchanging, awake. Return home to that awareness. Rest in it. Let it hold you. You are enough exactly as you are. You always have been. You always will be.